Speaker, I know many members across the House will find these facts to be incredible. To that, I can only say they are right. It beggars belief that throughout the whole timeline of events, officials in the Foreign Office saw fit to withhold this information from the most senior ministers in our system in government. That is not how the vast majority of people in this country expect politics, government or accountability to work. And I do not think it's how most public servants think it should work either.
Nobody told me we were going to start the show like that, but here we are. Good morning and welcome to the Mike Graham Show. I mean, I don't know about you, but that was possibly the most ridiculous session of Parliament that I think I've ever seen in the history of Parliament, which has been going for quite a few hundred years. Russell Quirk is here with him this morning. Richard Tice is in the House. He's going to be talking to us in a minute as well about how it all went yesterday. But 2.5, nearly 3 hours of torture, where Keir Starmer went from being the Prime Minister giving a statement about how nobody told him anything to looking like a complete dunderhead as he struggled to answer more and more questions, many of them from his own side. Yeah. He was nailed by Diane Abbott. In fact, we should probably. Somebody said to me, "That's not the first leader of the Labour Party she's nailed." But that's not where we want to go with this story today. But shall we have a look at Diane Abbott's question? Because this was brilliant. This was the moment of the afternoon. Check it out.
Diane Abbott.
The Prime Minister has gone on at considerable length about process and procedure. But ordinary people don't really care about process and procedure. They want transparency and they want to know that they can have confidence in the words of elected politicians, like all of us in this chamber. On the question of Peter Mandelson, it was in the 90s that Peter Mandelson had to resign from the cabinet for the first time because of his dealings with the millionaire Geoffrey Robinson. It was a few years later he had to resign from the cabinet for the second time because of his relationships with the billionaire Hinduja family. Peter Mandelson has a history. Peter Mandelson has a history, and what this House wants to know is why, knowing Peter Mandelson's history, going back now 30 years, and given what has been known, it's one thing to say, as he insists on saying, nobody told me. Nobody told me anything. Nobody told me. The question is, why didn't the Prime Minister ask?
Mr. Speaker, in relation to her question, let me be clear. I should not have appointed Peter Mandelson. As soon as the further revelations...
I mean, let me be clear. He must have said that about a million times, right? And as people pointed out quite rightly yesterday, as soon as he says, let me be clear, you know what's about to follow is likely to be untrue.
Well, you know, he's scurrying for time to think about what he's going to say next. Which
and he was really bad, I thought, actually answering the questions because, you know, he read his piece out, which is obviously rehearsed, and he's probably practicing it all day. But as soon as he was asking, he was like stumbling and mumbling, he doesn't stand well.
Because look, the rest of the country, let alone Parliament, knows that he's defending the indefensible.
Yeah.
And look, take your pick with regard to whether he is misleading the public and the House and not telling the truth.
Which I think he is.
That and or could be both. He is just so incompetent that he's completely and utterly out of control.
I don't believe that he's that incompetent.
Of his own government.
I don't believe that he's that incompetent.
Well, no, but the point is, do his officials and his ministers believe that he's so incompetent? That's why they don't bother telling him anything.
Well, if you look at the Times today, right, the truth of what is likely to come out today with the appearance of Ollie Robbins in front of which we're going to bring you live, by the way, for the first time. We're going to bring you some live parliamentary action here, which is another groundbreaking manoeuvre for the new Mike Graham show. According to the piece in the Times, which is always quite close to the Mandarins, there's this woman, Helen McNamara, who was on Laura Kuenssberg on Sunday. She actually worked in the Boris Johnson administration, cabinet secretary. She's written a piece for them today. But Robbins, basically, it says that he's expected to highlight the prevailing atmosphere at the time of the appointment, including the fact that Starmer chose to press ahead with announcing Mandelson as ambassador in the US before security vetting had been conducted. So basically, what Robbins is going to say, we think, is that he was very clear that he wanted, that Starmer wanted Mandelson to be given the job. He was also very clear that was the outcome that Starmer wanted.
Yep.
So therefore, that was the outcome that he gave him.
Well, and that is why, if it's true that he was not told, despite the fact that obviously Ollie Robbins was very close to him and clearly knew, but also, of course, the new cabinet secretary, Antonio Romeo, knew, it seems, for days, if not weeks beforehand.
Well, we're talking to David Maddox today as well from The Independent.
Didn't The Independent in January run a story?
We're talking to David Maddox from The Independent, who asked back in September the question to the Downing Street press office.
Did he fail vetting?
Did he fail the vetting?
Yeah.
And they lied and said, all the vetting procedures were contained correctly. So you've got to be careful about how they answer these questions, right? So it's not that they've necessarily deliberately lied, but they've deliberately obscured the truth.
Well, and you know what this is? It's all very Sir Humphrey. Now,
it is.
Apologies to anybody under the age of 50 that doesn't know what that reference relates to, but it's yes minister and yes prime minister, where it's very, very clear, and it's all becoming true now, isn't it, in terms of life imitating art, that actually under a weak leader, which of course Starmer is, you end up with the mandarins, the civil servants, effectively running the show, obfuscating, spinning, fibbing, and that is why, because he's incompetent, because he's weak, Keir Starmer is now in the position he is, where he's in rather a muddle, I think it's fair to say.
Here's what Robbins is supposedly going to say. He's going to say that he did not actually see the formal recommendation by the UK security vetting people.
Robbins didn't see it, not Starmer.
No, that Robbins didn't see it either, but that he was given a verbal briefing by the Foreign Office's security team and told that Mandelson's case was borderline, and basically they would be likely to oppose giving him clearance. So it's all very murky. And they're also, so I believe this is what happened, right? That Starmer was basically told, he hasn't passed the vetting, but we'll fudge it because we know that you want him to get the job.
Yeah.
And that's what, but he's going to say that they didn't tell him that specifically.
Yes.
So that's why he's hiding behind all these kind of verbal legal niceties.
Yeah, but I think also if we take a step back from that, it's very clear that Starmer has said to the likes of Ollie Robbins and those involved in the Mandelson appointment and the vetting, get this man appointed under all and any circumstances.
Yeah.
So this may be why Ollie Robbins and others didn't say to Starmer or anybody else that there was an issue in terms of the vetting, because Starmer had made it very, very clear that he wanted Mandelson simply to be appointed no matter what. Right. No matter what. And don't forget, Starmer, and this is part of the smoking gun here, Starmer announced the appointment of Peter Mandelson when he knew
before
that the vetting,
Christmas.
well, he knew that the vetting had not completed.
Yeah. And he got the King to sign off on it before Christmas.
Yeah, and he was told by Simon Case, the previous Cabinet Secretary, Prime Minister, my strong recommendation is that you let the vetting process proceed, as would be obvious, before appointing this man. And he ignored
all of that, but he also clearly went ahead with it because he had basically had a conversation, which he will never admit to, which was that, never mind what the vetting says, just make it work.
Yeah, so is he a liar, or is he incompetent, or is he both?
I think he's both, but he's more of a liar than he is incompetent, if you know what I mean. Because I think he's obscuring the truth and nobody believes him. I mean, it's quite right for Lee Anderson to get up. We'll talk to Richard about this in a minute.
Well, and Zara Sultana.
Well, let's concentrate on Lee Anderson first, because I'm not a fan of hers, even though she did the right thing and called him a barefaced liar. But at the end of the day, Lee Anderson said the words that everybody who was watching it believes, which is that nobody believes a word that he's saying.
Yeah.
You know, because it doesn't sound like proper English. It doesn't sound like the kind of decision-making that anybody would make. I'll tell you what it's like. And I would say this goes back into the old Fleet Street bad old days, where editors would ask people, you know, how did you get that? And they'd go, you don't want to know.
Yeah.
And that would be, therefore, plausible deniability. So the editor can say, well, I didn't know that happened. Nobody told me. It doesn't mean he didn't know.
No.
Because, of course, you talk about it in the pub. Of course, are you really seriously telling me that nobody inside of Downing Street had a conversation about the fact that Peter Mandelson had failed the vetting? Even if he hadn't failed the vetting, that they didn't have conversations about his history, about his propensity for leaking documents? I mean, this guy, and this is one of my favourite lines of the whole thing, got strap 3 clearance. Now,
Which is the highest level that you can possibly
I don't want to make
achieve.
any crude jokes about straps and strap-ons, and, but at the end of the day, strap 3 is the highest level security clearance, which means that he had access to some very highly contentious and national security-related material, which he may well have leaked.
Well, and as a consequence,
Starmer yesterday wouldn't even answer the question. When he was asked, can you assure us that there was no security leakage going on? I'll do an investigation. He wants to investigate everything, but he doesn't have the answer to anything.
Yeah, but that's the thing. There's now another investigation when we're going to be kind of not being able to see the wood for the trees insofar as all these investigations that are going to ensue.
Right.
An investigation as to whether Mandelson leaked those top secrets either to the US or to China or to Russia. And here's the thing. We need to go right back to the beginning. When you seek to appoint someone to one of the most prominent and important and sensitive jobs in government, as in ambassador to the US, why on earth would you even consider in the first place someone like Peter Mandelson that has been fired from cabinet on the basis of mistrust, not once but twice?
Yes.
Everyone knows. I mean, the man has the nickname,
who's also
the Prince of Darkness.
Who's also been accused of, while he was business secretary under Gordon Brown, of leaking sensitive material and government emails to Jeffrey Epstein in order for him to make money on the international currency markets.
And we also know, and Mandelson has admitted, that some of his clients were connected to the Chinese regime.
Yeah.
We know that.
His biggest client for the lobbying firm that he was working with was a Chinese industrial military company.
Yeah. So I think one of my daughters, who are 16 and 17, could have probably started the vetting process on Peter Mandelson all those months ago and said, you know what? I don't think this is a good idea.
No, but also there's one of the questions came in yesterday from, I think, the Tory benches. Keir Starmer has admitted that he made a mistake in appointing Mandelson, that he should never have made the appointment. So what's the consequence of that?
Yes.
And he would apparently tell you that there is no consequence to it because he's going to stay in place. But I'll tell you what was interesting was by the end of the session yesterday, most of the Labour backbenchers had been cleared, and most people had just left, which tells you that they're not supporting him.
And during the 2 hours, they were heads down, they were not animated, they were not visibly supportive.
Very quiet.
Because, again, they know that they otherwise are going to be seen to be trying to defend the indefensible. Let's also just go back to the point yesterday. Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, admitted yesterday to misleading Parliament.
Yeah.
He actually admitted that. I mean, he couldn't do anything else, could he? Now, his defence now hangs on this knife edge, which is whether that was reasonable and whether he knew that he was misleading with intent or not.
Right.
That's the question. And I don't think the public, let alone Parliament, and I know we'll hear from Richard Tice in a minute insofar as the atmosphere and the chatter in Parliament and the tea rooms yesterday, but I don't think the majority of right-thinking people in this country believe him for a second. They either believe he's a blatant liar or he's a bit of a liar. Either way, he's misled Parliament. And being hoisted by his own petard, so to speak, he has gone on record many, many times, particularly over Boris Johnson and his reign, which was a calamity, if we remember. He called for Boris Johnson's resignation dozens of times over less, frankly, over birthday cakes.
Over much less, absolutely right. And of course, we've got a whole series of developments going on today because in addition to Ollie Robbins appearing at 9 o'clock, which we will, as I say, bring you live from the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, where he's going to talk about precisely what the circumstances were under which he was able to appoint Mandelson effectively because Mandelson wanted the job and because Starmer wanted him to get it. But there is also at 12:30 going to be an emergency Commons debate because Kemi Badenoch asked for it yesterday and said basically we're not satisfied with the Prime Minister's reasons for why he did what he did. So that's quite a serious development for Starmer.
And by then, members, of course, will have knowledge of what Ollie Robbins has said from 9 o'clock onwards.
Exactly.
This appearance by Ollie Robbins this morning is being described as potentially, inverted commas, box office.
Yeah, it will be. I mean, I suspect he will do what most of these mandarins do, which is to be quite exact and to be quite sort of low-key, shall we say. I don't think he'll necessarily completely skewer Starmer, but I think he'll cause enough problems for Starmer that he'll have to go. I just think he will.
Do we worry that Ollie Robbins' concern will be, I mean, there's elsewhere in the papers, there's speculation with regards to what Ollie Robbins will be paid as a consequence of his exit. I've seen a number as high as £390,000. Do you think he'll be concerned that that number will be smaller if he doesn't play ball? In other words,
no,
I'll keep quiet so that my payout is bigger?
Because I think Starmer is now, if there was a sort of, a movement towards the door, he's about 3/4 of the way towards the door now. So it's no longer about Starmer, it's about the system. So they want to protect the system. So they want Ollie Robbins to tell the truth, but they also want Ollie Robbins to be looked after, because Ollie Robbins is a far more serious individual than Keir Starmer
he's the star witness.
To be. He's the star witness, and he also is an expert on the Constitution, which Starmer claims to be, but literally isn't. Also, Whitehall sources in the Daily Mail saying the next batch of documents on the Mandelson appointments, and there's more stuff to come out, is likely now to be delayed until after next month's local elections. So, it's absolutely extraordinary what is going on here. So Starmer is just going to cause more and more trouble for himself, for the government, and for Number 10 if he continues to sit there. And I don't know whether he can hang on till May the 7th, but if he does, surely by May the 8th he's got.
I think he will.
And I win my 10 quid from Everwood.
I think the Labour Party would be very, very keen for him also. So it's what they call a kitchen sinker, isn't it? That there will be a devastation across Britain insofar as how many Labour councillors are lost, maybe up to 2,000 Labour councillors. They'll want Keir Starmer to take the blame rather than it being on somebody's news watch. So I suspect he will then last till May the 8th, but not long after that.
I can't see him lasting at all. And in fact, I think he might go before that. Things are so bad. Russell, thank you very much indeed. Take a little break if you don't mind. Have a cup of coffee. We're going to get Richard Tice in to tell us what he makes of it all. But we've got a poll going basically today. Who is the most delusional character in history? Is it Billy Liar? Is it Walter Mitty? Is it Comical Alley? Or is it Keir Starmer? At the moment, Keir Starmer winning clear lead. 97% of you think that Keir Starmer is more delusional than Walter Mitty, Billy Liar and Comical Alley put together. Which is brilliant. Let's have a look at Lee Anderson's intervention yesterday, the Reform Chief Whip, of course. He got up and said what most people who were watching the show actually believed.
No one believes him. The public don't believe him. The MPs on this side of the House don't believe him. His own gullible backbenchers don't believe him. So does the Prime Minister agree with me? He's been lying.
Prime Minister, sorry, we don't use those words, and I'm sure the members withdrawn it.
Mr. Speaker, I have the greatest respect for you and your office, but I will not withdraw. That man couldn't lie straight in bed.
Order. Mr. Anderson, you'll have to leave. Phil Brettle.
Yes, the Speaker of the House there, Lindsay Hoyle, pulling himself up to his full height of pomposity, which he then did even more to an even bigger extent with Zara Sultana, who he had a sort of backwards and forwards row with about whether she would leave, whether she wouldn't leave, whether he would name her. I mean, it's all ridiculous, really. Richard Tice is here. Very good morning to you.
Very good morning to you. What a day it was yesterday.
Wow. I mean, just incredible. I sat down thinking, this will go for about an hour and then Starmer will scurry off. It's 2.5 hours later, he was still standing there.
Well, he was still waffling on, still blathering away. And still misleading people at best. What was extraordinary? So much was incredible through the day. It was also incredible when he said the whole story was incredible. The place fell about laughing.
Yeah, I know.
But in the morning, we were briefed that he was going to admit that he inadvertently misled the House.
Yes.
And then he didn't.
Yes.
No, he didn't have the courage even to go.
He denied it, didn't he, in
far.
fact, later on?
He basically denied it. And he threw everybody under the bus.
Yeah.
Except himself.
Yeah.
And this is the man who has previously stood up and said, I will always take responsibility for my team.
You've been around a long time, Richard, in this game. I don't think I've ever witnessed or encountered a man who tells so many outright lies, flip-flops his opinion so much, and seems to think that's fine. Doesn't seem to worry that he said something completely different before that.
Lee Anderson knew what he was going to say because he knew that he had to speak to the concerns of the British people. Yeah. And as you just said, he said what everybody is thinking in their gut, in their heart. This stinks, and this man is a compulsive liar and has been for a very long time. And he said it just had to be done. So actually, I followed him out the chamber.
Did you?
And we went for a drink.
Quite right. Because you're banned from the whole. Because he's banned from the whole.
You have to leave the whole parliamentary estate.
Is that for 24 hours or something?
Basically for the rest of the day.
Okay.
So we went to the nearest pub and we celebrated.
It's a bit like what you want to do when you're at school, isn't it? You get sent out of the room, sent out of the class, and you get down the pub.
But it is completely unbelievable that when I think you got him on later, David Maddox from the I paper. What is it, 6 months ago, back in September. They rang Number 10. They said, is it true? What comment do you have about the fact that Peter Mandelson failed vetting? It was on the front page. Yeah. And apparently no one of the hundreds of people in Number 10 thought to ask, what about this storage? Is it possible? Should we just check with the Foreign Office? Should we give them a ring? No. Apparently, everybody thought no. It's a piece of fake news.
They're asking to bend credulity to such an extent that it just doesn't make any sense. And this is the problem with having somebody who's got this kind of legal brain, supposedly, which is completely and utterly nonsense to most ordinary people.
Well, actually, the clarity that Diane Abbott brought to proceedings, and it's not often one says that, but she just stood up.
She was great.
And she just, in 45 seconds, absolutely eviscerated him. And sort of concluded it, why didn't you ask?
Right.
This forensic prosecutor, this brilliant lawyer that we've all been told we must respect and admire, in a year and a half, never thought to ask, did he pass the vetting?
Yeah, right.
How did the vetting go, folks?
Right. Have you seen the I newspaper this morning, Prime Minister? You know, it doesn't pass muster, does it?
It doesn't pass muster. And what also was clear yesterday, he would not answer the question as to when he was given a memo by Simon Case back in November 2024 that the vetting of Mandelson should be done before the announcement. He would not ask why he didn't answer, why he didn't agree with that memo, carry out that recommendation. Instead, he basically just fired him, fired everybody.
Exactly.
All around.
And Ollie Robbins, I suspect, at 9 o'clock this morning, when he speaks to the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, will say, because of the nature of the way that Starmer conducted the nomination and then the confirmation before the vetting had taken place, it was very clear that that's what he wanted. And so occasionally, Foreign Office mandarins will do the bidding of the Prime Minister.
But equally, I think it will be a fascinating testimony from Ollie Robbins if he says and reaffirms the inference that came out yesterday that the Foreign Office are not allowed to confirm the result of the vetting to Number 10 and to ministers. In a sense, if that is true, it highlights the incompetent madness and uselessness of yes minister style civil service rules and regulations, that something as serious as our national security to involving the ambassador to the United States cannot be given to our ministers. You ask the question, who's in charge? The civil servants or the ministers and the Prime Minister?
That situation also seems to be in doubt because there are others in the civil service who say it's not true to say that you can't disclose the result. You just can't disclose the reasons for the result. So, for example, I get that. So I can understand why, for example, if they were vetting you and you failed for some reason the vetting, they shouldn't know why that was, but they should know that you did fail it, right?
At the very least, you should know that you failed it. I think in issues of national security, to the Prime Minister, for heaven's sake, you should certainly be able to infer what it involves. Because did he fail because of his links to Epstein? Or, Prime Minister, did he fail because of concerns around possible links to Russia and China? There's a very big difference.
That's what we're told.
That's what we're told. But apparently ministers and the Prime Minister are not allowed to know something which is critical to national security. I think that's a disgrace. I'm struggling to believe it. If it's true, it needs changing immediately.
Well, and he says it's going to change, and he's hiding now behind the fact that he's changing it. But I'm not sure that that's good enough, because at the end of the day, and I said this yesterday, if you're sitting in the Pentagon or the White House, or you're part of the, the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States of America, and here you've got a guy who's reading top-level security Strap 3, rather bizarrely called, documents in which there could be all manner of secrets regarding national security of America, of the Five Eyes, of Britain. How the hell is he seeing all that?
Well, and therefore, actually, this decision to appoint Mandelson has humiliated the United Kingdom on the international stage with our Five Eyes partners. That in itself, purely the decision of the Prime Minister, actually should be enough for a man of decency to say, I've got this so badly wrong, in order to restore trust, I'm going to have to resign. That was the mood of the House yesterday, was this man needs to go. It's only a matter of when, and we're a laughing stock. We're a laughing stock because of this whole saga. We're a laughing stock because it turns out that the nation with once the greatest navy in the world doesn't have a navy that works anymore. You know, I mean, I've got a bit of WD-40 if they need some.
Yeah. I mean, where is HMS Dragon at the moment? I mean, nobody knows. Is it still kind of, lolling around in the Mediterranean?
Have we got a spare spanner or two that we can, give to the
and then
government?
he had the balls to appear on a submarine. Yesterday on the front page of the Daily Mirror, because he decided it'd be a good idea to get onto a nuclear submarine. As somebody said, can you imagine you've spent 200 days under the sea, and the first person you see when you come up is Keir Starmer.
You want to go back for another 200 days?
Send me back down. Dive. But here's the other thing, right? What it tells you is the most revealing thing about this government, that they don't apparently seem to know how to run anything. It's not surprising that the economy, we're going to hear economic results today, I think, on unemployment, which is likely to push them up above the 10-year high.
Bizarrely, that unemployment figure has just come out, and extraordinarily, it's just fallen to 4.9.
Yeah.
Which is well, let's wait and see.
They've hired a load more civil servants.
Well, it may well be because they've hired a load more civil servants.
In order to do more investigations into what the civil service is actually doing.
When we've got forecasts that show that we know that the number of people claiming universal credit has gone up 1.5 million at least since the general election. 1.5 million young people. So how can unemployment be going down? I mean,
well, you know what they'll be doing? They'll be fiddling the figures. They'll be going, well, if you work 16 hours a day, or 16 hours a week rather, and you're claiming universal credit, you're not unemployed.
Something doesn't compute that unemployment has gone down from 5.2 to 4.9. That doesn't compute at all.
No, because there was a forecast just yesterday to say it was going to go up probably to something like 5.8, which would take it over 2 million for the first time in a decade. But it does go. But just watching Starmer yesterday and seeing the way that he comports himself, the way that he speaks, the way that he sort of takes himself so seriously, you can see that there must be a huge logjam at the top of government, because who on earth can go into Starmer's office and get a tick in a box to go and do something? Because you can't imagine him actually agreeing to anything before he's had an investigation, before he's ordered a committee.
He will have instructed a process.
Yeah.
And the most common word used yesterday was process. There's been a process for this and a process for that.
Process, yeah.
It's absolutely obsessed with process, and as long as there's a process ongoing, no one needs to make a decision about anything.
Yeah.
And in a sense, it's process that makes the decision ultimately, and of course, that's what leads to the problem. So,
well, I love the Matt cartoon today. Nobody's seen it, which is in the front page of the Telegraph. Could the Labour Party replace Keir Starmer without telling him about it? There it is, which is brilliant. Because he's now.
I think they'd quite like to. I think they'd be absolutely delighted. And so over the next couple of weeks, in the run-up to the May elections, I think a number of the senior ministers will be on resignation watch. And the question for the Labour Party is who breaks cover first? There were rumours yesterday that the Veterans Minister, Al Khan's, is on resignation watch. And I think others besides, without question.
Well, I was watching,
very ambitious people.
Watching a lot of the social media kind of posts last night, and apparently the mood in the sort of the tea room, if you like, which is where an awful lot of the gauging goes on with government and backbenchers and all of that. The mood was definitely one of a resignation that he has to go. And as I said, once the end of the session kind of loomed, there were hardly any backbench.
That's right, they were
MPs
disappearing as fast as they could. He was surrounded through most of it by David Lammy, who was literally falling asleep next to him, and by a very, very, very glum-looking
I thought she was going to burst into tears.
I thought she was going to burst into tears again. She had that sort of vibe about her because, of course, she is so inextricably linked to him. The moment he goes, she goes. That is, that's without question.
And what about today's debate? So after Ollie Robbins appears, which will be box office, as we've said, at 9 o'clock, and we'll bring you that live, as I said, at 12:30, Kemi Badenoch has asked for and been granted another emergency debate.
Yes, it's called a Standing Order 24.
So what happens there?
Well, it's a 3-hour debate, but the Prime Minister won't be there.
Right.
And I think the real action, frankly, has taken place yesterday.
Right.
Grilling the PM, and him basically reeling on the back foot. I don't think anything new will come out of today's debate. I'm not quite sure who's going to represent the government. But look, it gives an opportunity for more people to get things off their chest for a bit longer. But it won't change anything unless something explosive comes out of Ollie Robbins' testimony this morning.
We might see a senior Labour backbencher or somebody saying something which perhaps was not expected or something like that about Starmer's
future.
Yes,
that's possible. But I would have thought they would have said that yesterday. I mean, Carl Turner, for example, yesterday morning, down on the floor of the House of Commons on the front row, he was pretty devastating, just next to Diane Abbott, and also John McDonnell. Was attacking the Prime Minister.
And they started attacking him. They started shouting at him. That's right.
I mean, quite extraordinary.
Amazing.
And they're just they're at loggerheads. This, we are in this sort of the dying days, the end days of this this Prime Ministership, and in a sense, it's just a matter of when and whether or not he has the nous and the courage to take the bull by the horns and says, okay. I will go on this date and have a proper leadership process.
I thought at one point before yesterday's events that he would have actually said that at the end of the sort of session and said, look, I realise that my behaviour in this regard has been shambolic and I did not do what I should have done. I made a mistake. Therefore, I will be stepping aside, but now's not the time to do it because we're in the midst of an international crisis.
He could do that.
However, I will be making plans for my successor. He could have done that.
If he announced that he was going to go in the summer, they might do better in the polls on May the 7th. They certainly couldn't do any worse than the projections. But I just don't think he's got it in him.
And it's saying here, Whitehall sources saying the next batch of documents, so there's more documents to come on Mandelson, are likely to be delayed until after next month's local elections. So they'll be even more damning, I would imagine.
And that's in contradiction of the motion from the humble address, which said they must be released as soon as available, subject to the Intelligence Security Committee. There's no reason, there's no linkage with the May elections, and they should just be released as soon as possible. So that's another stitch up.
And everything is a stitch up. I mean, he was asked at one point yesterday by another, I think it might have been a Lib Dem, about whether the manoeuvre of getting rid of Peter Mandelson from the House of Lords was going ahead. And he sort of said, we've started the process.
Another process.
But he's still a Lord, technically speaking. So, what on earth he can't seem to do anything right. It's just ridiculous.
He can't do anything right. I must say, given the gravity of yesterday in the House of Commons, and then it's on everybody's front page. Somewhat surprised that it's not on the Sun's front page.
The Sun don't seem to think it's a front page story that the Prime Minister is literally on his last legs.
On his last legs. You wonder what's going on there.
Well, they've got a very strange...
Inexplicable.
They've got a very strange lead. I mean, you don't see anything on Starmer, right, until something like, in the old days, we'd call it pages 8 and 9. That's like a feature spread, right? And it says Keir Squirmer. They've got... Jack Elson, political editor, writing a little piece about Diane Abbott, but their leader page, which is where they normally give their view, they don't really have a view. They just kind of tell you that, Starmer shouldn't be blaming everybody else. And their final paragraph says, whatever the Prime Minister says about failures of the process, he cannot escape the fact his determination to send Mandelson to Washington, D.C. was the key mistake. And that's normally where you go, and now he must go.
It's
so
very
they haven't
odd.
said it.
It's very, very odd. It's almost as though they're embarrassed by the fact that they recommended to vote for him back in July 2024.
Well, or perhaps they're still clinging on to some hope that the Labour government will do them a favour or something like that, because you know how at the top of these media companies work. I mean, it's a good time for me, I think, to point out that I was the first person to say that Starmer will not last the full term.
You
and
called
I said it in August of 2024.
You did,
because I knew that this guy was flawed in some way. But you've had your own run-ins with the press lately.
The reality is, I
keep geting front page flashes.
I've almost got a debenture slot now on the front page of the Sunday Times. I've had 3 in the last 6 weeks. With a complex story full of wrong assumptions, wrong dates, wrong numbers, and it's quite extraordinary. But who's been digging into my affairs for literally months and months and months? A Labour Party tax expert who, by their own admission, is working in conjunction with the Sunday Times, and it's quite extraordinary.
This is Dan Needle.
This is Mr. Needle and Mr. Pogrund, and they're just they're so furious.
It's bordering on obsession, isn't it?
Well, I think it is an obsession actually, and the whole thing is ridiculous. But this has come from the top of News UK. They are embarking upon basically a decapitation strategy because they don't want reform to succeed, and it's just it's a nonsense. Of course, when you've been involved in 100+ companies over 40 years, right? Of course, in a variety of different countries, no one's perfect. If a mistake's been made, of course we'll recheck the numbers, which I've already told them.
But when you're involved also in commerce, why on earth should you be under some kind of pressure from the government or the sort of the lefty elites in this country to say you must pay as much tax as possible?
Which is literally what they said.
Surely
the original thrust was that I shouldn't do any form of legal efficiency or avoidance, which is legal.
Right.
That's different to evasion, which is illegal.
Yes.
And they said, no, you mustn't do that. You must pay the maximum tax that you possibly can.
Yeah.
And that's literally what they repeated on Sunday in this,
as
this
if it's
huge
some moral
article.
duty, right?
Absolutely. It's your legal duty running a company to be tax efficient within the law.
Yes.
And of course, that's what I've done. I'm very proud of my track record, and whether or not I make another appearance, a fourth, this coming Sunday.
Well, you never know.
Time will tell. But
you think
I would just remind people, the first time that my political enemies triggered a tax investigation against me was exactly a decade ago, during the Brexit referendum.
Okay.
And Cameron's lot got an investigation against me. Lasted a year, and guess what happened at the end of it?
Nothing.
HMRC found that I'd significantly overpaid.
Oh, really?
By a 5-figure sum, which I was delighted to receive. So,
So this could be a bonus for you then. I mean, you might end up getting another tax
last
rebate.
week, the whole thing is it's so extraordinary, and of course we'll double check the numbers. But last week, the whole article was on the basis that the total number paid is correct, but we're concerned that he might have paid it out of the wrong account.
Yeah.
I mean, how is that a front page story of the Sunday Times? It's become a rag.
Right. I think that's the problem, is that, in my day as a newspaper editor, a newspaper journalist of some standing, you'd say, what's the story? You're sitting in a meeting and you go, what's the story? Is that the best you've got? Is that really the best splash you've got? And you send them away. And the great thing about particularly Sunday newspaper journalists is that they've always got another story tucked away in case the editor doesn't like the one they've got. So you're quite right to say that the fact that that is not much of a story means that it's being driven from above as opposed to being found out from below.
Yeah. And so the story could be a successful businessman comes into politics.
Yeah.
I've actually just worked it out, and I can exclusively reveal this.
Yeah.
I think I've generated more tax revenues for HMRC in my business career than the whole of the 400 Labour MPs have paid in tax in their lifetime, cumulatively.
Yeah, I'm sure that's right.
And so I'm actually very proud of that.
Yeah.
And
also, most of their tax that they've paid has only been because they've been given money by the public sector, which is actually, in the end,
absolutely
not generated wealth in the first place.
Exactly.
Right? So they're paying tax with the money you've given them, in addition to not paying as much tax as you've already paid.
I mean, the whole thing's hysterical.
Yeah.
But look, it's a rough old game of politics.
Yeah.
That's fine. And we push on.
Yeah. Well, you might do that. There's that great line, isn't there, from I think it was what was his name? It was one of the aides to Richard Nixon, who said, when this is all over, maybe we'll do an investigation into you. So but of course, Reform are not likely to shut down any newspaper outlets, unlike Labour, who would love to shut down loads of newspaper outlets that don't agree with them.
Well, in fact, I mean, like your good self, we're actually starting our own podcast.
Yes.
And our own sort of media outlet, because it's become quite clear the establishment are so worried about the rise of reform, so petrified about how well we're going to do on May the 7th.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, there are a lot of shy reformers out there. I'm campaigning at the moment. A poll's out this morning. Even YouGov admitted we've gone back up in the polls.
Yeah.
There are a lot of shy reformers out there, and this shenanigans with this Prime Minister, who, as Lee Anderson said, he couldn't lie straight in bed. This, I think, will be the sort of the final sort of death knell of this Labour regime. The only question is how long the whole Labour government can last before a general election.
Yeah.
And when you've got Ed Miliband gleefully doubling down on more windmills, more solar farms blighting our countryside, and refusing to use the energy treasure, the oil and gas under our feet, that everybody else is using if they're lucky enough to have it. I mean, you realise we are led by absolute morons.
Absolute morons. Completely and utterly true. Great to see you, Richard.
Lovely to see you.
Thank you very much indeed for coming in. Actually, while we get Russell Quirk back in, shall we not have a look at what Lee Anderson actually said? Because he was interviewed by Mark Austin on Sky. yesterday. And again, part of the sort of, legacy left-wing media elite saying, well, why did you call him a liar? You haven't got any evidence he's a liar. I mean, what are you, blind? Of course you've got evidence he's a liar. Every time he opens his bloody mouth, he's lying. Have a look at this.
In the bubble, in the world of politics, in Westminster, just any man on the street knows that Peter Mandelson is a wrong, and nobody would employ this man anywhere. This man, our Prime Minister, gave him a job.
Your point was that Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, was, look, Ollie Robbins is going to say tomorrow, we think he's going to say that he believes he did the right thing. And some will argue that the fact that others are saying Robbins was right not to tell the Prime Minister is of itself proof that the Prime Minister is not lying.
It's absolute nonsense. Look, why isn't Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, asking his staff, asking these officials serious questions about the appointment of this man? Everybody in this country knows that Peter Mandelson is a wrong and is not fit to be doing this sort of job. Why isn't the Prime Minister asking these questions? It's a cover-up from start to finish.
But you can accuse him of a lack of curiosity, inquisitiveness. You can accuse him of a lack of judgment, but I'm not hearing from you any real evidence that he lied.
Well, I'm not interested in what you've got to say or what you've got to say on the matter. All I know is that my inbox is full of people thinking the Prime Minister is a liar. The backbenchers where I sit in Parliament, they all think he's lying. When you look at his own backbenchers, they think he's lying. This man is not fit for office. He needs to resign straight away.
But letters in your inbox are not proof that he's lied.
Well, it doesn't matter. I'm there to represent my constituents, and when I get in that chamber, I'm there to represent my constituents. And if they think he's lying, I actually believe them. I think he is lying. I will go in that chamber and I'll ask questions on their behalf. Somebody needed to say this in the chamber, and unfortunately, they're not brave enough in the other political parties. Reform UK will ask the difficult questions, and that's why I did it today. I think he's lying. I think he's misleading the British public, and I think he's misleading Parliament.
All right, just finally, I mean, isn't it basically a bit of Lee Anderson reform attention seeking?
No, it's not attention seeking at all. This is the thing that you lot don't understand. You lot don't understand in the media and in the bubble that people out there in the real world are asking real questions about our Prime Minister. I'm prepared to go in the chamber and ask these real questions and get answers. Unfortunately, I didn't get an answer, and I'll stick to my point. I think the Prime Minister is lying.
All right, Lee Anderson, thanks for coming on. Now, in the last few hours...
Marcos is not a bad guy, actually, as far as some of the Sky people are concerned. But the trouble is, he's infested with this kind of, what you might call mainstream media kind of love of Labour and the Prime Minister. And that, how can you possibly call him a liar? I mean, that's just outrageous. He's not... What proof have you got that he's a liar? Well, one, he keeps telling lies. That would be one form of proof. And Lee Anderson there said, well, actually, it's about the fact that I've got an email box full of people saying he's a liar.
Yeah.
And everybody knows that he is a liar. I mean, even if you take something as simple as what Richard Tice was saying, that clip that we've got where he says, when he was head of the Crown Prosecution Service, if anybody makes a mistake, I carry the can. Well, clearly, no, you don't.
No, I think the watershed as well, for those of us that are kind of in this political bubble as commentators, politicians or whatever, is when the apologists that always apologise for Starmer stop apologising for Starmer. So notably Beth Rigby.
Yes.
Beth Rigby from Sky, up until about a week ago, everything she wrote, particularly on Twitter, on her personal account, was in defence of Keir Starmer. Oh, he's a lovely man, he doesn't mean it, he's misunderstood, he's the right guy for our times.
Well, even when the story broke last Thursday with the Guardian, she said, her line was, the Prime Minister's furious that this has been allowed to happen.
Yesterday she changed. So the stuff that was coming out of her Twitter account yesterday was that basically she sees fundamental errors in his judgment, in his integrity, and she's pretty much saying, OK, even I now admit he has to go.
Yeah, and she also admitted, or she was revealing last night, that she was one of the ones writing about the atmosphere in the tea room inside the House of Commons was really, really dire, and nobody could see any way out of it apart from him resigning.
Yeah.
So the well is sort of is growing, if you like. The need for him to be replaced is growing. Which is why I say I wonder whether he might actually just go before the elections because, as Richard said, it might actually give Labour a boost.
Yeah, I mean, look, I secretly hope he stays because he's so bad. He's good for reform and I guess for the other opposition parties, but he's terrible for the country. And look, not only bad in terms of the way that government is being run, U-turns and crazy ideology and, the man that has no belief. But let's not forget, as we've talked about on this channel many, many times, his reputation and the way that he is seen on the world stage. I mean, literally, the world's leaders and media are laughing at our Prime Minister.
Trusted source, we need to see this. Coming on screen now.
Okay, a trusted source. I'm sorry to text you so early. I saw the interview given by Ed Miliband on Sky News. He's just thrown Starmer under the bus. Miliband said that when Starmer announced appointing Mandelson as British ambassador to the US, both he and Lammy raised concerns with him about it. Interesting. Where's that coming from?
Trusted source, can't say.
A trusted source, Pooch can't say. One of his sources, very, very
well, and Angela Rayner, of course, yesterday as well said, and it's in the papers this morning, that we need more bold action from government. So she's not throwing Starmer under the bus directly over Mandelson, but she's come out to play in terms of her positioning herself. Look, this is a fight for potential Labour Party leadership dominance between Ed Miliband and Angela Rayner. It started. It started.
It has. It absolutely has. I mean, she had a meeting with Andy Burnham, did she not? I think on Sunday night or Saturday night, something like that. Should we have a look at a couple of other clips from yesterday? Because I think this will put you in absolute and utter surety that he is on his way out. Nobody really has got anything good to say. Have a look at John McDonnell on how Labour has become toxic.
To my honourable friend, many will appreciate his apology today, but many of us will remain bewildered still why that appointment took place, despite the warnings that many of us gave him. And isn't the reality this, that when he sought to realise his ambition to become leader of the Labour Party, with very little base within the party, he became dependent on McSweeney and Mandelson and Labour together to organise, fund his election. And that when he became Prime Minister, the reward for McSweeney was control of Number 10, and for Mandelson, the highest diplomatic office. And the message, the unspoken message to civil servants was, what Mandelson wants, Mandelson gets. This has damaged the party that I've been a member of for 50 years. I urge him to take steps to clear this toxic culture out of our party and take the first step by having an independent inquiry into Labour together.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, can I just deal with what's at the heart of that question in relation to an unspoken message to civil servants? I don't accept that, Mr. Speaker. It is simply not good enough on a question of national security where clearance, the recommendation is clearance be denied, for anyone, particularly senior civil servants, to do anything other than provide me with the relevant information. And that is what should have happened in this case.
By the way, Pooch, you've been a bit lackadaisical this morning because surely we should be having more Starmer alerts. You forgot to do that one. If he's going to be speaking, Starmer is tetchy, doesn't like it Upham. Says, but that's from the Mike Graham show. It's come in separately, I think, from... he is very tetchy. And as we said earlier, there's going to be this 3-hour debate at 12:30, which is bound to, I think, give an opportunity, and I'm going to predict this, to some reasonably senior Labour MP. It could be a backbencher, but somebody kind of respected, who will start the ball rolling to actually say, is it not time to start considering the exit strategy? Yeah. Because at the end of the day, that's what he's going to need to do. And everybody knows he's going to have to leave. So you might as well put the whole thing into perspective now and set out some kind of, which I bet is what they're doing in Downing Street, because he will want to leave, like all politicians, with some kind of legacy to be remembered by. Now,
what's that?
Does he want to go now before it gets worse, though? Because if it does get worse, he's going to go after the elections where he'll be blamed for losing the biggest Labour majority in history, right? Albeit that we know it was a very thin majority, although the numbers were big. He will be then pilloried because there'll be more stuff about Mandelson coming out. I think he cuts his losses now and just goes.
But he doesn't think intelligently like that, Mike.
He doesn't.
He thinks with his
it's going to get worse.
And don't forget,
it's not going to get any better, though,
but he thinks he's doing a great job. And probably his wife, I mean, I don't know if he ever sees her, but his wife and others around him will be saying, this is fine. You're doing a great job.
I don't know if that's
You've got
true.
to hold the nerve.
I think his wife will be going, look, it started to go wrong literally on day one when everybody found out that my knickers were getting bought by Lord Ollie, you know, and it's very clear that she doesn't... Well,
we should have realised.
Not for any nefarious reason, obviously, because
should have realised.
He's on the other bus. Which Starmer doesn't throw people under anyway. But that's enough metaphor. But I mean, the point is that I don't think she likes him very much.
So do you think she's quite enjoying this?
I think she's probably, I mean, like a lot of wives of prime ministers, or possibly even husbands, you know, they don't actually enjoy being in Downing Street. It's a horrible job.
Yeah.
It's a ghastly place to be.
Yeah.
You know, you don't get any peace. You don't ever wake up in the morning thinking, this is all going really well.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare,
yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
So I don't think any sort of civilian, if you like, apart from like I mean, she loves the old transatlantic trips because, you know, she holds hands with him then, but she doesn't go anywhere else. She doesn't go to, you know, cold Tuesday night in Stoke.
Yeah, but I guess the kind of the romance and the glamour of being effectively Britain's first lady, that wore off very, very quickly, as you say, because of the whole Wahid Ali thing. The other thing, of course, we'll start to hear now through the lobby hacks, no doubt, is the fact that Miliband and Angela Rayner will be running around offering jobs to people for their cabinet.
Yes.
That's what normally happens at about this juncture. So we know that he's on the way out. People now in the Labour Party, the Parliamentary Labour Party, will be thinking, OK, well, fine, who's next? Yes, there are two, maybe three contenders.
Yeah.
If Burnham can come back, but that will take ages. That's a long shot. But they'll now have to put together a credible alternative, I suppose, in terms of government and a vision. But also, we all know how this works, whether it's Washington or Downing Street and Whitehall, horse trading will begin, which will be Miliband saying to all the right people that have a pool of influence behind them in terms of backbenchers, if you support me, you can have Home Secretary.
Yeah.
You can be Foreign Secretary. That will start now.
Well, I saw last night on GB News some guy whose name is, he's got one of these weird names. He was wheeled out, quite a minor backbencher, but he was clearly the only person they could find to defend Starmer. To say, I think he? Yeah. I mean,
Barry Gardner normally does that. Has he stopped defending him?
Gardner wasn't. I mean, this was down on College Green.
But if Barry Gardner stopped defending Starmer, it's over.
It is absolutely right. We've got the Miliband. So let's do the super chats first, because we keep forgetting to do those. Let's do some super chats because you can send that in, of course, to our YouTube chat bot. It's time to go. If Abbott makes you look stupid, says LTL, and she certainly did make him look stupid with a very cogent and sensible question. Richard says, Mike, I wonder if barristers across the land are now downgrading their hourly rate. Toes must be curling. Well, I mean, I've said this ever since the beginning. Keir Starmer is no lawyer. He's no barrister. People say, oh, he's a lawyer. He thinks like a lawyer. He's crap. If he was my lawyer, I would fire him. Plausible deniability, says Ralphie, is right, but also willful blindness are terms which apply to Starmer's predicament. I think Starmer knows exactly what he's saying. He's being very careful about how he says it. Please ask Mr. Tice why Nigel wasn't in the House. Is Nigel now part of the uni party? Is it time for Nigel to go, says Easy Boy.
What?
Don't be ridiculous. Well, one, it's not time for Nigel to go. It's time for Nigel to go into the 10 Downing Street is what it's time for.
Yes.
And if he wasn't there, I'm sure he was out probably campaigning. You know, the whole point of having
we are already 2 weeks away from probably one of the biggest local elections, certainly that we've seen in my lifetime.
Yeah.
So believe me, no one is working harder politically than Nigel Farage. I was with him last week. He toured Essex relentlessly. I think one day... I
don't know where he gets the energy from.
No, I don't. I mean, I was with him. He'd done Harlow and Great Dunmow and Ongar and goodness knows what else on one particular day. By the time he got to us in Chelmsford at 7 o'clock on Friday night, he'd done 7 previous appointments.
Right.
So, Nigel is, indefatigable.
Indefatigable, he is indeed.
Hard to say.
This from Loyal, who says, morning, Mike, is all this Starmer chaos distracting from the truth? The government wants to dip into our pension pots. I mean, I don't doubt that they want to dip into our pension pots. No, I don't think they want this as a distraction. They'd rather it wasn't going on. Marco's Magic says, Mike, are we actually, and I mean actually close to getting rid of this Britain-hating, treacherous liar for Prime Minister Comrade Starmer? Please let it happen. I believe so. I really do believe it. I think that this is now the end game. We're in the final furlong, and he's going to be gone. Literally within less than a month, if possible, less than 2 weeks.
Ladies and gentlemen, a word of caution. We have to remember what's coming next.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't want to be a downer. I'm all for celebrating the end of Keir Starmer and his absolutely disgraceful and outrageous, hapless tenure.
Yeah.
We are going to end up with, I'm afraid, because there's not going to be a general election just because the Prime Minister goes, because there are too many Labour MPs. There's too much of a majority. We're going to end up with Angela Rayner or Ed Miliband.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen. I think those two, either one of them, take your pick, are far worse. Far worse. In fact, there should be a poll, shouldn't they? which one is worse, or do you think that we should keep Keir Starmer?
Yeah.
Because Angela Rayner is going to take...
We definitely should not keep Keir Starmer.
No, but Angela Rayner is going to lurch the country even further to the left, and we know that that's why a lot of left-wing backbenchers will want her in place.
Yeah.
Whether it's bashing landlords, more tax on the rich, more so-called workers' rights, and so on. And Ed Miliband wants the country to be run on goblin breath and fairy farts.
Yeah, but this is why I believe, and I've always said this, and I want to point out that I was the first person to say it in August of 2024, this government will not last, Keir Starmer will not last, and they will drive it all into the sea because they don't know what they're doing. But I think we've got the clip from Miliband, I believe, for a period on Sky this morning. Let's see.
Isn't that it was rushed. My argument is that Keir Starmer knew this stuff before, right? We knew that Mandelson had been sacked twice. We knew that he had a relationship with a convicted paedophile. We knew that he had a lobbying company with links to Chinese firms, right? We knew this stuff.
So you're saying he should never have been appointed?
Yeah.
And I agree with you.
But that's Keir Starmer's fault, isn't it? Not
Ollie Robbins' fault. And he said that.
But look who's lost their jobs, right? The Chief of Staff has lost a job. Ollie Robbins has lost his job. The head of the civil servants has lost his job. The director of communications has lost his job. Should Keir Starmer lose his job?
I don't think so.
He was the one who made the error, as you admit.
Well, I don't think so, no.
I think there might be a better clip than that that we can find, where he says that he apparently warned Keir Starmer not to actually appoint Peter Mandelson, or he raised issues along with David Lammy that it wasn't a very good idea. But you could have got my dog to give him a better piece of advice.
No, I know, but you're right. On this clip, you're right. This is very telling that you've got a front bench Labour parliamentarian, an MP that has a cabinet position, effectively throwing his boss under the bus today, saying, I told him not to do this. He didn't have to say that. He could have stood back and said, no, I support our Prime Minister. I believe everything he said at the Dispatch box yesterday. It's terrible.
Well, his face tells the story, doesn't it?
Well, but you see the fake disgust. Yeah. Oh, it's very disappointing, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
I mean, come on, Miliband, we know exactly what you're doing.
Exactly.
Slippery sod.
Exactly right. Entirely correct. I think we've got Rakib Hassan in the house. Rakib, a very good morning to you, sir.
Morning, Mike. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you. Have you ever seen such an absolute shambles of a government? I mean, this is just beyond parody now, isn't it?
Well, Mike, you know that I've been very critical of the quality of governance we've seen in recent times in the UK. But I think you could say this one really takes the biscuit.
Yeah.
I'm very surprised that the Prime Minister is still in his position. He's desperately clinging on to his position. I think the entire Mandelson scandal, I think it brings shame to the UK. Actually, the fact that a character like such an unscrupulous character could be appointed to such a high-profile, prestigious ambassadorial role. And I think that the Prime Minister, he does have this tendency to really throw the people under the bus. I call it's a really aggressive form of accountability shedding. I just think that in this case, if you truly take accountability, I think that would have to entail a resignation in my book.
It would have to. And I mean, I think there's no doubt that that's on its way. I think the skids are now under him. I think his performance yesterday would suggest that that certainly the reaction to it is not good from the Labour backbenchers, from the rest of the cabinet. Basically, Starmer, I think, is a dead man walking. And it's really just a matter of time as to whether he hangs around until May the 8th and witnesses the disaster at the local election, or he even goes before that.
No, there is that possibility, but I think that many people who want to remove Starmer from his position as Prime Minister and also leader of the Labour Party, I just think they're just biding their time. I think they're just waiting for the English local elections, where I think Labour is going to perform very badly. I think they're going to they're going to suffer very heavy losses. They're facing this triple threat, Mike, from Reform UK, especially more traditional, provincial, white British working class areas, in the more sort of metropolitan areas, you could say, university towns, where there's younger populations, more urban populations. I think the Green Party could perform very well. I think the Green Party could do quite well in London. I think they could win a number of councils in London, actually. But something that we've talked about is the rise of the pro-Gaza Muslim independence.
Yes.
And I think that I'd look at places like Birmingham, for example, Mike, Newham in East London, and also post-industrial towns up north, such as Blackburn. I think that the rise of the pro-Gaza independent movement, those Muslim independent candidates, I think they could perform really well at Labour's expense. So that triple threat is a real problem for the Labour Party.
And I mean, a lot of those Gaza-driven independents are also kind of slightly on the Green side of politics as well. They've been co-opted, if you like, by the Green Party. But we saw, did we not, over the course of the last few weeks, a bit of a schism appearing because of that rally that Zach Polanski did in London, where he had all those guys dressed in bondage gear dancing around, mincing about, like some LGBT pride march in Old Compton Street, in the summer. And suddenly they're all going, oh, hang on a second, we didn't vote for that. We're quite conservative, socially conservative. So
Indeed.
do you see that becoming a problem for Polanski and a problem for the Greens?
Oh no, I think in the Gorton and Denton by-election, I think many British Muslim voters in that constituency, I think what they wanted to achieve was to do maximum damage to the Labour Party, which got knocked into third place in an area of the country where they'd won since 1931. And I think that they saw the Green Party as the party which was the best option for them to back in terms of blocking Reform UK, because I think there were many British Muslim voters in that constituency.
Yeah.
They didn't want to see Reform UK win in that constituency. But I think it's very clear, Mike, we've talked about this for some time. I think that there's some of an incompatibility between radical transgenderism and conventional Islamic morality, put it that way. And I think that over time, I think that's why I think that increasingly, I think when more British Muslim voters, when they have a real understanding of what the Green Party stands for, I think this is why I think the local pro-Gaza independent candidates will perform very well, because what they do, that they have that foreign policy emphasis on issues such as Gaza, and I think in some cases, I think the Iran conflict might be talked about, and also territorially disputed Kashmir, and they'll blend that with sort of left-leaning economics, concerns over the lack of affordable housing, underperforming public services, but they have those more conservative attitudes, socially conservative attitudes, and also concerns over antisocial behaviour as well. And when they blend that together, that's not necessarily something that the Green Party is offering, but a number of those Muslim independent candidates will be offering that.
Yeah, interesting. There's a new poll out this morning, YouGov, Sky News and Times poll, which has got Reform up 3% to 27%, Conservatives on 17%, but the big story probably, the Greens on 17%, 1 point above Labour, who are on 16%. And Lib Dems on 14. I mean, extraordinary, really, isn't it?
It's absolutely extraordinary. I think the fact that Labour is standing at 16% is absolutely woeful for the party. Yeah. I know that there's times that governing ruling parties, they do struggle over the course of a parliamentary term. But I think that a lot of the problems that Labour are facing, potentially they're existential. Well and truly. I think that I have to give Kemi Badenoch a little bit of credit. I think she's staging some kind of recovery. I think that at the beginning of her leadership, I think she struggled a little bit, but I think she's found her position in a sense and become more comfortable there. And I think she's had a series of very impressive performances when it comes to PMQs as well. So
she's got better for sure.
There.
But I mean, the trouble is,
she's definitely been improved.
An awful lot of people who were Tory voters, though, and Russell will back me up here, have said to me in the past 2 years, we'll never vote Tory again. And they'll vote and they'll give Reform a chance, won't they?
Well, the problem is with the Tories, of course, is we've heard and seen this all before in terms of them supposed to be a tax-cutting party. And, of course, Rishi Sunak, when he was Chancellor, put corporation tax up from 19 to 25%, and so on and so on. They were the original party of net zero. We should have realised, shouldn't we, when David Cameron was running around the North Pole on a skidoo talking about the ozone layer in 2008, that we were in for a bit of a net zero rough ride. And now, as a consequence, we end up with Ed Miliband. I think Kemi is reasonably plausible, but the problem is, A, she reads everything. You never see her off the cuff or on a soapbox, so to speak. Right. And frankly, and I know I would say this, everything she said over the last few weeks around immigration has just been to copy Reform's policies.
Yes, that is the problem, isn't it? So, go on, sorry.
No, I think that Russell makes some very important points. I think authentically, culturally conservative voters, they'll be very disappointed with the 14 years of Tory-led rule, especially those who are very concerned over matters of immigration, integration, and also the pace of demographic change in modern Britain. So many of them will give Reform UK a chance. There's no two ways about that. I think what people need to understand that if there was to be, or what they'd like to know is if there was a Reform UK government in the future, who are the individuals who will have the key roles in that government? I think Reform UK is starting to doing that, but they need to do a bit more in terms if they really want to boost public confidence in the party's ability to actually govern the country.
Well, the party have put together effectively what is a shadow cabinet. Right? That was done a few weeks or months ago, but obviously it's not going to be a full cabinet yet. We're probably still, unfortunately, 3 years away from a general election. Can I just ask a question, though?
Yeah, go on.
Who the hell are the 16% that are still voting Labour?
I know. Well, I think they must just be all they must be all the people that work for the people who are in government.
The public sector.
The public sector.
Train drivers.
Train drivers up to a point, but at the NHS, obviously, people in the NHS who believe all the cobblers about, how Labour are actually fixing it, which they're not. And also all the staff that work for the MPs, because there's quite a lot of them.
Well, Whitehall,
thousands
council
of
officers.
Absolutely. Rakib, listen, good to see you. Great to talk to you. We must do it more often, but thank you very much indeed. Coming up next, we're going to be speaking to David Maddox, who's the independent journalist from the I newspaper, who actually wrote to Downing Street a message back in September of last year to ask the question, is it true that Peter Mandelson failed the vetting process? To which the answer came, well, what we can tell you is that the vetting process was proceeded as normal. But they wrote a story based on the fact that he had failed the vetting, which apparently Keir Starmer never saw. Incredible. Nick Knack says it's ironic the biggest tit in polls is now getting beaten in the polls by the tit whisperer. It is a good one, that. Yeah, thank you for that. Nice to lower the tone every now and again. Russell's going to stay with us because we've got Ollie Robbins appearing at 9 o'clock in front of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, at which he is going to unload, presumably, on Keir Starmer. There's a letter which has now emerged in which he says that ministers appointed Lord Mandelson to the role because of his great experience in the area. And the key phrase there being ministers appointed as Lord Mandelson to the role, i.e. wasn't me. Paul Rose says this, he'll be bricking himself today over Sir Ollie. Yeah, and also about the 12:30 3-hour legacy as well, which is going to go on the debate this afternoon. Jane says Starmer's is a lavender marriage. It may well be. I don't know. I can hazard a guess, though. Who is this Starmer bloke, says Dopey Dave. Yeah, well, don't worry. He won't be around for much longer. The skids are definitely under him. Let's get some news. We haven't done any news yet, have we? With is it Edward Hughes today? Sorry, Edward. Get on with it.
Good morning. I'm Edward Hughes. Belendus Maximus Keir Starmer is still doing his best impression of a man who definitely knew nothing about Peter Mandelson's vetting failure. It beggars belief, he says, while apologising to Epstein victims and throwing civil servants under the bus. Classic leadership. Meanwhile, London's Jewish community is enduring repeated arson attacks on synagogues and centres, with counter-terror police eyeing possible Iranian proxies. Gatwick has proudly claimed the title of Britain's worst airport for delays. And in lighter news, the weather's turning changeable after that unusually warm spell. 3 men charged with manslaughter after a tragic golf course incident. MPs are raking in second job cash like it's going out of style, and the SAS is apparently hemorrhaging soldiers over war crimes probes. We support our veterans here on the Mike Graham Show. Please remember to like and subscribe. Laters, Tigers.
That, of course, is Edward Hughes with the news. Coming up, there'll be lots of news to report on because at 9 o'clock, as I say, Ollie Robbins is going to appear before the Select Committee in Parliament, and we'll be bringing you that live and letting you hear exactly what he's got to say from his own lips. Right now, though, it's time to have a look at some more clips, if you don't mind, before we speak to David Maddox, who's the independent journalist who managed to actually extract from Downing Street the fact that, Mandelson had in fact failed the vetting process. We'll talk to him in a moment. Right, first, though, have a look at this. This is Keir Starmer and the number of times he said he didn't know.
I wasn't told that it failed security vetting. Not only was I not told, no minister was told.
I didn't know the content of the Bloomberg emails, which showed that the nature and extent of the relationship that Peter Mandelson had with Epstein was far different to what I had understood to be the position. As I made clear, I didn't know about those comments at the time of welcoming Al-Fatah to this country.
Further information came to light. The Justice Secretary resigned.
I was not told that he had failed security vetting.
In relation to your second question on Labour Together, I didn't know anything about this investigation.
Matthew Doyle did not give a full account of his actions.
And now information has come to light, which had I known it at the time, I wouldn't have appointed it.
I think you always end up sounding like the passenger in this government rather than the driver.
I didn't know. I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything.
By his own admission, he's not in control.
Either he's trashing the ministerial code, or he's claiming he was repeatedly lied to by his own advisors and that he didn't know what was going on. Is he now going to do the decent thing and resign?
Angela May looks better with a mask on, doesn't she? I mean, it's just a thought, you know. I mean, much better. She's got more chance of winning the leadership battle if she does
Covering
that.
her face, yeah.
You know, sorry about that. It's not entirely a misogynistic comment, but I mean, it is ridiculous, isn't it? A number of times he just says, "I didn't know. Nobody told me. I didn't know that. New information has come to light, and if I'd known what I know now, then I wouldn't have done it." You know, what sort of a bozo is he?
Well, so, I mean, clearly a record of not knowing anything. And A, that is surely incompetent. B, I think it still leads to questions over what his ministers and civil servants think of him in terms of them not telling him things. It doesn't show much respect for your leader, does it, when you don't tell them very important, compelling things? Now, transplant this situation into the private sector for a second, right? If he was the CEO of a business or a football team manager, any other scenario that you want to kind of conjure up, there would be no excuse, because the top of the tree, the leader of a business, is the one that takes responsibility and accountability. It's as simple as that. Right. So it's not an excuse. Ignorance is no defence in the law, so to speak. Not. So it's not good enough just to say, well, I'm so stupid and I'm so hopeless that no one told me anything, and if they did, I don't remember, so I didn't know, and therefore I'm off the hook. You're the leader, apparently. You're the boss. The buck stops with you. You've got to go.
Well, exactly, and I think there's no doubt that he's got to go now. Let's talk to David Maddox, who is, of course, front and centre very much of this story, because David Maddox, formerly of the Daily Express, now the I newspaper, brilliantly pointed out back in September to Tim Allen, who was then the head of communications at Downing Street, that he understood that Peter Mandelson had indeed failed the vetting procedure. And what did they have to say about it? David, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. Great to see you.
Great to have you on the show. Finally, thank you. Welcome to the Mike Graham Show. We're absolutely firing all cylinders this morning, because it's obviously a key day. Ollie Robbins is going to be getting up at 9 o'clock to talk about how I think he's going to refer to a letter or two, which we'll get into in a minute. But tell us a bit about the history. Tell us a bit about what happened. Obviously, you don't need to give your sources away, but back in September, what exactly did you hear?
So I had a well-sourced story, actually, sources here and in Washington, D.C., who told me that it failed security vetting. I mean, there's been a little bit of confusion because I kind of mentioned MI6, who don't officially do the vetting, but they're certainly asked. Anyway, I put it to Downing Street to Tim Allen, who was the director of communications for Keir Starmer. This is, just to explain to people, this isn't just some press officer. This is a very senior official, handpicked by the Prime Minister, literally in his ear all the time. So, he took about 50 minutes to reply. And this is September the 11th last year. Right. And then I get this kind of cursory reply, vetting done by FCDO in normal ways. And which actually, to be honest, I was quite happy with, because it wasn't a denial. Yes. It kind of gave me the chance to go back to the editor and say, well, they're not really denying it. Let's just go with it. Right. And we smashed the story. There was a bit of follow-up on it. It got mentioned in Parliament, and then, as the way things were, I mean, it was a bit mad at that point, because there were just revelations coming out of everywhere about Mandelson and Epstein, and the story moved on. I mean, just imagine my surprise this week when it suddenly came back.
Well, quite. But also, how credible though could it be for the Prime Minister to now say that he didn't know that Mandelson had failed the vetting procedure until last Tuesday, when you wrote the story and it appeared in the Independent and was mentioned in Parliament last September?
Well, this is exactly it, and this is why I published the initial communications I had with Tim Allen as evidence, because it just clearly isn't true. He said, the Prime Minister, I mean, I was astonished. The Prime Minister said Downing Street, not just him, but all his ministers and Downing Street, did not know about this problem until last Tuesday. I mean, it's just not true. I mean, it'd been put to them, and it turns out it doesn't surprise me, other journalists have put it to them as well. Certainly Dan Hodges was putting it to them. But I actually remember, after I'd run my piece, Newsnight had got their sources saying similar things as well. And it was, so, my issue with all this is either Keir Starmer's now lying, or at the time he was just being willfully ignorant and trying to avoid any kind of knowledge of it at all, to try and maybe distance himself if things blew up, which of course.
Well, I think he's obviously trying to sort of make out that was his position. The worst case scenario for him is that he wasn't told anything and he didn't know anything. But as Diane Abbott pointed out to him yesterday, well, why didn't he ask? But also, it's completely disingenuous to say that he was avoiding finding out. If it was on the front page of a newspaper, if it was published, if it was talked about in Parliament, surely you can't believe that there was no conversation inside Downing Street at that point where somebody said to somebody else, or possibly Morgan McSweeney said to somebody else, is it true that that Mandelson failed the vetting process? They must have had conversations about it. It doesn't make any sense for them not to have.
I mean, it's just not credible. It's not credible that nobody was told back in January either, frankly. I mean, it's just, I've spoken to numerous ex-cabinet ministers, ex-civil servants, who ex-special advisors. These things get passed up. They get dealt with a great deal of seriousness. Private conversations I had with ministers in, his strap rooms, they call them, which are, kind of secure and secret conversation places, secure and secret.
I've heard of strap rooms before, but not in that context.
Not the Green Party type. But it's just not credible. And as I say, at the very best case scenario for the Prime Minister, it was willful ignorance. And I actually thought Diane Abbott, I mean, we won't hear this very often on your show, but I thought Diane Abbott put it perfectly yesterday. Why on earth didn't he ask the questions?
Yeah.
And,
Absolutely.
it's his job. It was his responsibility. He was pushing the appointment. He's the man in charge. He's the Prime Minister. And, to say, well, I didn't know, Gov, is, I'd love to see, when he was Director of Public Prosecutions, if some criminal had turned up in court and says, well, I didn't realise that belonged to somebody else.
I know. I know. But this is the whole thing. I mean, the bounds of credibility are being absolutely stretched to within breaking point. And it seems very clear to me from his performance yesterday that he hasn't improved his situation. In fact, if anything, it's now worse than it was 2 days ago because he was so bad at answering some of the questions that were put to him.
Well, there were more holes in it than a Swiss cheese yesterday. I mean, he could barely deal with anyway. He stuck to this one line, I wasn't told, and kind of grabbed onto it like some sort of life raft and just couldn't answer anything. He couldn't answer about our approach in September. He couldn't answer about really a whole series of things. And, he keeps on saying, oh, well, the FCDO was asked repeatedly. Well, were they? And that's because if they were, then surely somebody would have said.
Yeah, right.
And it's quite clear that he wasn't asking as well. I mean,
because he's done this thing, hasn't he? He's done this deliberate kind of, trying to put distance between himself and the issue because he thinks that will protect him. But it won't protect him in the end because nobody believes that he didn't know.
No, and he hides behind legalese and process. I mean, he's been a damaged Prime Minister for quite some time now. He doesn't have any authority anyway. No. I mean, you can see the fact that he can't make a decision on the Defence Improvement Plan, even if it's been sitting on his desk for months because he's terrified of upsetting either the Treasury or the MOD. We're completely frozen since last year's welfare rebellion, and nobody really trusts him or believes him. The only thing that's keeping him there is nobody quite knows who could take over from him in the Labour Party, and because all the obvious candidates seem to be holed in some way or other. But I mean, I've always thought he kind of limps on till May, and then they kind of have apocalyptic results in these local and devolved elections, and then the Labour MPs suddenly find a backbone and move on.
Russell.
And another part of the scandal, of course, is the fact that we know that there was a diktat from Keir Starmer that went to Ollie Robbins and the Foreign Office and relevant civil servants, and presumably to the vetting process. That was a diktat that said, I want Mandelson to be appointed, just appoint him no matter what. And as a consequence of that, actually Keir Starmer made the decision and announced the appointment of Peter Mandelson before the vetting process. Now, that's a bit like interviewing an HGV driver and saying, can you drive? And he says, yeah, I reckon.
Yeah.
Okay, well, don't worry about your licence. Get in the truck, drive it down the road and see what happens, and we'll see your licence later.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's exactly like that.
The point I would make, really, is they didn't need a vetting process. They just needed a Google search. I mean, really.
Or a memory.
Yeah.
Or a memory.
Or a memory. I mean, this man's links with Russia and China, which were the real security issues, by the way. I mean, Russia and China were so well known at the time. The Americans were pleading with them, if you remember, for them not to be sent over because they didn't trust them on China. And, it was, you didn't need some amazing kind of in-depth security search.
But isn't there also evidence? Isn't there also evidence that King Charles had said in a private meeting with Keir Starmer that he would not be minded to agree that this appointment was a sensible one? Do we know that as fact, that King Charles effectively intervened?
It's certainly been said. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, we never get to the truth of these things with the senior royals. I mean, like the Queen and Brexit, but it certainly wouldn't surprise me at all, actually.
So we're expected.
Because Charles will have had the experience of this man.
So we're expected to believe. So we know that he was desperate to appoint Mandelson. We know that several people had said either don't appoint him because of his history. Simon Case, the then Cabinet Secretary, said, actually, Prime Minister, you should wait before appointing him until you actually have the vetting process back. We then have this kind of murky grey area as to whether actually Keir Starmer or anybody in Downing Street was advised that the vetting had failed, despite the fact that you uncovered it many, many months ago. I mean, there is no defence here, is there?
No, there's none. There's none. I mean, it's just apart from, I was busy, I didn't ask, I didn't know. I mean, it's just... how he didn't know and why he didn't ask about the most important diplomatic position he can appoint as Prime Minister.
And with regard to someone so toxic.
The other person who's up to his neck in it, I'm afraid, is David Lammy, because that position. I mean, one thing, I interviewed James Cleverly over the weekend, who of course was Foreign Secretary, and he was explaining those positions, those head of mission diplomatic positions, they are entirely in the gift of a Foreign Secretary. There is no formal process. Normally goes to career diplomats. But when it's a political appointment, they get all sorts of warnings about people. He actually cancelled two political appointments to much more minor diplomatic roles because of issues which were raised privately with him.
Are we saying...
Well, hang on. What about the other issue about the Russian company that Mandelson was linked to, Starmer was asked more than 3 times yesterday whether he knew, and he dodged the question every single time.
Yes, he did. He also dodged a question about the unminuted, unofficial meeting he had with Mandelson and one of Mandelson's clients in Washington when Mandelson was an ambassador. And they went off and... had a meeting with Palantir, who subsequently, by sheer amazing, shocking coincidence, got a big contract afterwards. I mean, the whole thing is incredibly murky. I mean, I was on another show the other day. They said it doesn't pass a sniff test. I think it just stinks to high heaven.
Exactly right. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, I was just going to ask about the David Lammy point. I mean, are you suggesting that it's David Lammy here that has his fingerprints all over the overruling of the failed vetting process rather than Ollie Robbins?
I think so. The way I look at it is that Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff of Keir Starmer, was absolutely dead set on Mandelson getting that job. Mandelson and McSweeney were working in the heart of that government to run that government They even did the reshuffle last year between them. And Starmer relied so much on McSweeney that he allowed McSweeney to push this through. But it was in the gift of the Foreign Secretary. They made it clear to Lammy that it was going to be Mandelson. There's been stories that Lammy objected to it as well, but I don't know how true that's. There's no real evidence.
Well, we're told this morning, and we haven't actually seen the quote yet, but that Ed Miliband's been on Sky saying that both he and Lammy objected to the selection, shall we say, of Mandelson, or certainly raised questions about it. But doesn't this also ask the question back to Morgan McSweeney's phone being nicked? That, you know, we still haven't seen the CCTV footage of that, which the police said they were looking for. It now seems to me that there's even more likelihood that was another put-up job where McSweeney's claiming that the phone that has all of this on it, all of the conversations between him, Starmer, Mandelson, and others, maybe Lammy as well, and lots of other, you know, civil servants perhaps, that's all on McSweeney's phone. Oh, amazingly, no, we can't find it.
Yes, I mean it's stunning. I have to say that some of my friends and contacts in America take that a lot more seriously than people seem to over here.
Yeah. Well, I seem to be the only person asking the question about it. You know.
Yeah. I mean, it's just bizarre. It's just bizarre. And it's so convenient, you know, as so many of these things seem to be.
Right. It really is. It's quite extraordinary. Quite extraordinary. Yeah. Let's have a look, because we've got a couple of more clips to play, David, if you don't mind. Take a little breather. This is Kemi Badenoch yesterday, Pooch. Should we do that one? Talking about how Starmer throws everybody under the bus.
The Minister has thrown his staff and his officials under the bus. This is a man who once said, "I will carry the can for the mistakes of any organisation I lead." Instead, he has sacked his cabinet secretary. He has sacked his director of communications. He has sacked his chief of staff. And he has now sacked the permanent secretary of the Foreign Office. All of these people fired for a decision he made. The Right Honourable Gentleman's defence is that he, a former director of public prosecutions, is so lacking in curiosity that he chose to ask no questions about the vetting process. He asked no questions about Mandelson's relationship with Epstein. He asked no questions about the security risk Mandelson posed. Apparently, he didn't even speak to Peter Mandelson before his appointment. It doesn't appear that he asked any questions at all.
And Kemi Badenoch put a series of questions to him yesterday, again, most of which he didn't bother to answer because he can't answer them. Because it doesn't make any sense, any of it, does it? What's your take on what happens next? I know you said that he'll probably stagger on until May the 8th, but there could be something that happens possibly this afternoon in the debate in Parliament. There could be somebody that sort of sticks their head above the parapet, perhaps as a senior Labour source or a Labour backbencher or something like that. Could that happen?
Well, I think we have to wait to see what Ollie Robbins says shortly. Yeah. Because if Ollie Robbins really drops the bombshell on this and does him, it could be over very quickly. It depends what evidence Robbins has. But it's, I mean, it just feels like, it's felt for some time that he's kind of been limping to the finishing line. This is a government that's going nowhere and kind of dying on its feet.
Yeah,
really. So
well, it's sort of dying in real time, isn't it? Which for some of us is quite delicious to watch.
The Commons yesterday, there was no kind of cheering behind him or kind of real support. There was some toady questions which came up from Labour backbenchers, but there was no real support for him there.
No,
and I can tell you that Labour MPs feel deeply uncomfortable about what's going on, and and it comes down to but it's what's now known as the pincher question. Yeah. And what did for Boris Johnson was appointing Chris Pincher to a role of responsibility when he knew about problems with him. What's going to do for Keir Starmer is a question of personal judgment in appointing Peter Mandelson to this role, this US ambassador role. And frankly, it's a million times worse than Chris Pincher.
Yeah,
I mean,
of course.
it's just, what Mandelson was up to is so much worse than that, and the role he was in was so important that it is. I mean, it's unforgivable, really.
Yeah, it really is. I think we've now got the clip that we wanted to show earlier of Ed Miliband talking to Sophie Ridge on Sky. Check this out this morning.
As you know, I steered well clear of Peter Mandelson when I became Labour leader in 2010.
You said that you stayed clear of Peter Mandelson when you were Labour leader. What went through your mind when you saw he'd been appointed as US ambassador?
Well, that it could blow up, that it could go wrong.
Did you say that to anyone?
I had a conversation with David Lammy about it before the appointment. And I said I was worried about it. I do want to say one thing, though, which is...
What did David Lammy say then?
Well, I think he was worried about it too. Look, I think I do want to say one thing.
People were worried.
Sure, but of course, and look, a judgment was made. But look, I just want to say one thing about this, which...
Wow.
We'll never know what that is. But anyway, the thing is that, clearly there were misgivings. So clearly there were conversations. So clearly you would think that those people who had the misgivings would have somehow found out at some point that maybe, have you look at the paper, he's not passed the vetting procedure. It just, none of it makes any sense.
Well, that was Ed Miliband plunging the first knife, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, and let's not forget that Ed Miliband is one of those options to be the next leader.
Yeah.
I mean, and to be fair on him, he did stay well clear of Peter Mandelson. He was the one Labour leader who did have the guts to do that for all his other failings as leader. Yeah. He was absolutely right.
But that said, sorry, it doesn't seem that Miliband raised his objections in a formal setting in Cabinet. He didn't have the courage to do that, did he, Ed Miliband?
No, but I mean, but the fact that he's saying it publicly that he did raise concerns, the fact that, if a Cabinet Minister of his standing raises concerns with the Foreign Secretary, and the Foreign Secretary tells him, yeah, I'm worried about it too, then, we should know there's a problem. But that will have been, Lammy probably will never admit to it, but that will have been relayed back to the Prime Minister.
No, but isn't the point that that's not good enough? If you are in one of the most senior positions of state and you sit around that cabinet table every week and there is the spectre of a hugely damaging decision about to be made, as in Peter Mandelson become the US ambassador, isn't it your duty to raise it formally so that it's minuted? So it can be debated in Cabinet? I mean, why did Lammy not do that? And why did Ed Miliband do that? Are they all as weak as Keir Starmer?
I would suggest that they didn't have the guts to do it. I mean, we won't find out for, however long it takes for them to release the papers. We may well find out that it was actually minuted at some point. Or some note was passed.
But this also, David, does this not also give the truth to what really goes on behind the closed doors at Downing Street? There are lots of conversations that happen. Many of them are not minuted. Many of them are not written down because, you don't want to write everything down because obviously then people find things out that you might not want them to find out. So I think, yes, they are weak and yes, they are unwilling to put their heads above the parapet, but also it tells you that there were conversations that were going on about the likelihood that Mandelson's appointment would be a bad idea. So the idea that nobody then talks about whether or not he was going to pass the vetting, because you would think, I mean, any normal person would say, if you had doubts, say, well, let's see if he passes the vetting, wouldn't you?
Yes.
That would be part of the conversation. Yeah. Or you'd then go, well, presumably somebody can tell us whether he passed the vetting. And this is where it comes down to Ollie Robbins again, because Ollie Robbins, I think, will say that he wasn't allowed to tell anyone about the vetting. But James Cleverly, on the other hand, and others who you've spoken to, have said, well, he could have said that he hasn't passed the vetting without revealing why he hadn't passed the vetting, right?
That's absolutely true. And, as I say, I get back to a point that people just, and this is not just other politicians, this is ex-civil servants. I spoke to a civil servant who had been involved in literally dealing with crisis issues like this, where governments are on the brink of collapse, who said to me that it's just not credible. It's just inconceivable that some sort of conversation wouldn't have been had. He also said to me that us going to them in September actually exonerates Ollie Robbins as well, because at that point the alarm bell should have been ringing and they should have been checking it out. They clearly weren't.
Yeah, exactly. Extraordinary times we live in, David, but I mean, great time to be a political editor, and great time for me to be doing a show like this, because whatever happens, it's going to all be box office today and probably for the next couple of days. So we shall see.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were a betting man, are you saying May the 9th or May the 8th for the Starmer departure?
So I'll just say we got the elections on the 7th. The results really come through on the 8th and 9th. I think we're looking at probably the 10th or 11th of it. But I mean, it depends. He may, this man, it may just sort of say, well, it's all a blip. I'm still the best person for the job and desperately try to hold on. So it may take a few weeks for Labour MPs to grow a spine and tell him, you need to go, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, David, great to speak to you. Thanks very much indeed. We'll see you again very soon, I hope. David Maddox there from the newspaper, who wrote the story, believe it or not. I mean, this is quite incredible. Wrote the story back in September that Mandelson had failed the vetting procedure. This is the story apparently that Keir Starmer only found out about last Tuesday. I mean, that's a very bad clipping service, that, isn't it?
So effectively, no one in Downing Street, including the Prime Minister, reads the papers?
No, apparently not. Yeah. Or reads anything online. And, they never have a conversation about that. It's absolutely utterly ridiculous. Let's do I'll do my meltdown in a bit, but we'll then have the news, I guess, first with Edward Hughes.
Good morning. I'm Edward Hughes. Belendus Maximus Keir Starmer is still doing his best impression of a man who definitely knew nothing about Peter Mandelson's vetting failure. It beggars belief, he says, while apologising to Epstein victims and throwing civil servants under the bus. Classic leadership. Meanwhile, London's Jewish community is enduring repeated arson attacks on synagogues and centres, with counter-terror police eyeing possible Iranian proxies. Gatwick has proudly claimed the title of Britain's worst airport for delays. And in lighter news, the weather's turning changeable after that unusually warm spell. 3 men charged with manslaughter after a tragic golf course incident. MPs are raking in second job cash like it's going out of style, and the SAS is apparently hemorrhaging soldiers over war crimes probes. We support our veterans here on the Mike Graham Show. Please remember to like and subscribe. Laters, Tigers.
So, yesterday, something like 2.5 hours of parliamentary time was taken up, and in fact, slightly more than that, taken up with questions being put to Keir Starmer, with Keir Starmer apparently trying to convince everybody that he had told the truth at all times, that he really didn't know about Peter Mandelson and the vetting process, that he really didn't know anything about what had happened to Peter Mandelson, or indeed he didn't know anything about what Peter Mandelson had done in the past. He just wasn't told. Nobody told him. Nobody believes a word, of course, that he said. People in Parliament were told by the Speaker of the House, Lindsay Hoyle, an odious character who leans quite far towards the Keir Starmer side of politics, right? He started the whole debate process by telling everyone that they must be very careful about their language. They must be very careful about using what he called derogatory words about people. And he didn't mean people, he meant Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister. He actually issued a warning to say that anyone who had the temerity to call Starmer out for being a liar, which of course everyone in the country thinks that he is, that would be punishable by being thrown out of the chamber. 2 MPs yesterday decided that wasn't a big enough warning for them, because they needed to represent what they believed to be their constituents' beliefs. The first up was Lee Anderson. Have a look.
No one believes him. The public don't believe him. The MPs on this side of the House don't believe him. His own gullible backbenchers don't believe him. So does a Prime Minister agree with me? He's been lying.
Prime Minister, please. Sorry, we don't use those words, and I'm sure the members withdrawn it.
Mr. Speaker, I have the greatest respect for you and your office, but I will not withdraw. That man couldn't lie straight in bed.
Order. Mr. Anderson, you'll have to leave. Phil Brettle.
Now, if you thought that was pompous of Lindsay Hoyle, because Lee Anderson got a lot of praise, not only from his reform supporters, but from lots of other people on social media particularly, he said what we all think. He spoke for the country. Nobody believes a word that Keir Starmer says. Everybody knows he's a liar. All you got to do is watch his lips move, and every single time he contradicts himself or U-turns on something that he said before, we've already got him saying on record that he doesn't allow anybody else to take the blame. If they mess anything up, he always carries the can, which he clearly doesn't do. He sacked his chief of staff. He sacked numerous communications chiefs. He sacked the head of the Foreign Office now, Ollie Robbins, who's going to be speaking at 9 o'clock. We'll bring you that as soon as it happens. And he continues to throw various different friends, Romans and countrymen under the bus. Tulip Siddiq, you know, the corruption minister, who it turns out was found guilty of corruption in Bangladesh, chucked her under the bus. Louise Haigh, who kept pretending her phones got nicked when they didn't, when she was Transport Secretary, chucked her under the bus, got rid of her. He's got rid of loads of people. Angela Rayner had to go, Sue Gray had to go. But it gets worse, though, because Lindsay Hoyle, if you thought he was pompous in that exchange, wait until you see how he dealt with Zara Sultana from your party. Now, she's not somebody that I would normally support in any way, shape or form, but at least she had the cojones, more than anybody else in there, apart from Lee Anderson, to say the truth.
Appointed him, he defended him, and now he claims to know nothing. He is gaslighting the nation. So let's call this out for what it is. The Prime Minister is a barefaced liar, and if he had any decency left...
No, order, sit and leave. Leave now. I'll name you otherwise and go now if I were you. Leave. I'm not. Leave. I've no name. I've given the option to leave. I'd leave if I were you very quickly. Move before I read it and give me one option. Right, give me that. You have no duties. It's my duty to carry out and control this House. One chance. Do you want to leave now or not?
Right.
I name Zara Sultana. Minister, I beg to move that the name, the said member, be suspended from the House.
Mr. Speaker, call Jane Kitchen.
Jane Kitchen.
I beg to move that Zara Sultana be suspended from the service of the House.
The question is that Zara Sultana be named and leave this House. All those in favour? Aye. Leave. I'm sorry you've done this. I really am. Right. Come on, Reverend.
What a pompous old git he is, you know? And here's the irony, right? Keir Starmer can get up and stand there for an hour and a half, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, maybe even 3 hours, and tell one lie after another. He's fine with that. But if you call him a liar, then you get kicked out, right? So what does that tell you about the state of democracy in this country? You can't tell the truth in Parliament, because if you do, you get suspended, or you get told to leave the estate for 24 hours, like Lee Anderson. But if you tell lie after lie after lie, when you're the government, when you're the Prime Minister, when you're the Secretary of State for the Home Office, when you're the Secretary of State for the Foreign Office, when you're the Secretary of State for the Health Department, when you stand up and say, we've reduced the NHS waiting times, which is a lie, that's okay. When you stand up and say that you're putting more money into defence, which is a lie, that's okay. When you stand up and say that you're rescuing the economy and putting more money in people's pockets, that's all right, even though it's a lie. And if you dare to stand up and say that's a lie, you'll be kicked out. What an absolute shambles of a place the Parliament in this country is. This nation has been brought into disrepute by this government, by this Prime Minister, and he has got to go. I've been saying he's got to go pretty much ever since he got in. And soon he will be gone. And we can all have a bit of a party. We're thinking about ordering some champagne for Friday, the 8th of May. But I'm not sure whether we'll know enough by then. But I think we might do. We might have to ask you in, Russell, for a little drink. But listen, that's my meltdown for the day. Tell lies, get kicked out. No. So, we are going to speak very shortly about the state of our streets. We should mention, by the way, that it is the Queen's, or would be the Queen's 100th birthday, and King Charles is on the front page of The Sun today, speaking of the late Queen's legacy of hope and what would have been her 100th birthday today. He admitted that she would have been troubled by the times we now live in, but said, I take heart from her belief that goodness will always prevail.
Well, what a travesty that Her Majesty the Queen, the late Queen, has been bounced off every front page because of the incompetence and potential deceit of our Prime Minister. That says a lot, doesn't it, for this once great nation?
It does.
You've got a lying Prime Minister that takes precedence over the greatest monarch that the planet's ever seen.
I know.
I mean, Charles is interesting, though. Obviously, he's paid tribute to her. It's her 100th birthday today.
Yeah.
He talks about, she would obviously not be happy about these troubled times. I wonder what he means exactly.
Yes.
Does he mean international stuff?
Yeah.
Does he mean our government and our Prime Minister? What does he mean?
Does he mean immigration? Or does he mean the divided country in which we live?
Yeah, does he mean a broken country and a knackered London under Sadiq Khan? I mean, they're the things that I think that the monarch should be concerned about. The fact that this country is descending into the proverbial, hell in a handcart. He probably doesn't mean that. He probably means that, not every car runs on apple juice. He probably means that, there aren't enough windmills and solar panels around. We know what he's like in terms of his kind of Lib Dem credentials, bless him. Chalk and cheese, right? Between
absolutely.
King Charles and the late Her Majesty the Queen. So look, great that there's a tribute and great that he has come out and obviously has made the comments he has. But a bit odd. I don't really know what he thinks we should think he's saying in terms of the state of the world and the country and what he's lamenting exactly here.
Well, one of the things that's interesting, and I think it's happening in the next week or so, is his trip to the United States of America.
Which everyone's tried to ban.
Donald Trump. Well, Ed Davies tried to ban it. I mean, I'm not sure he's going to have much success with that. But, you do wonder what the conversation is going to be like, because by then, Starmer will either be completely out of a job or he will be literally hanging by a thread. And I think Trump has actually said something about it overnight, which I haven't seen the quote from him yet, but I think he's commented. I mean, we know that he's fallen out with Starmer anyway, long before this.
Do you remember the banquet when Trump visited and there was that fantastic scene of the longest table in the world, I think, which had about 800 people on it or something.
Right.
I might be exaggerating slightly. And of course, King Charles and Trump were next to each other and they looked like a couple of naughty school kids. I mean, they seem to be getting on like an absolute house of fire. I suspect they'll be laughing very, very secretly with their hands over their mouths so the lip readers don't see about Starmer. Trump is bound to say something. You've got rid of him at last, then, sir.
Yes.
He'll say, and I suspect that they'll rekindle their what appears to be very, very good relationship. We might not have a special relationship anymore between governments. We've definitely got a special relationship, I think, between the country by way of our monarch and the United States.
No question at all. But I mean, here's the other thing. I think that there's no love lost between Starmer and the King, because I think Starmer, for most of the parts of his life anyway, was a very staunch anti-monarchist. He wanted to get rid of the royal family. So, the apple didn't fall far from the tree.
And I suspect that's not something that a monarch forgets,
No.
is it? When your now Prime Minister has been slating your very existence for
Exactly.
years.
And wanting to do away with the very,
the
institution which you represent, But again, it shows you how embarrassing Keir Starmer has made not only himself but Britain on the world stage. I mean, I got a message yesterday from somebody on social media who's on holiday in Greece, and she said that she put on CNN in the hotel just because they wanted to see what the news was, and for about 10 minutes, all they were talking about was how terrible Britain was and how awful the government was and how it's all going horribly wrong, and today might be the day that they lose their Prime Minister.
Well, they're not wrong.
We are an international laughingstock.
And I'm sure you did it yesterday, but I'm not sure that the hapless lack of political judgment idiots at Downing Street should have had Keir Starmer on a submarine yesterday.
No.
I mean, there's all sorts of metaphors
there are
that go with that.
One or two funny comments which we won't repeat, but some of them were very good.
Just, underwater, sinking, like his premiership.
Seaman was most of them. But the thing is that I mean, the other thing people said was, imagine spending 231 days underwater and then emerging from the water for the first time to the surface and finding that Keir Starmer was waiting for you. You'd just be like, dive, take us back down.
And that somehow he's still Prime Minister.
I know. Well, the one thing they said as well was that, he's chosen the only people that don't know what a mess he's made of the country because they've all been under the sea.
Well, maybe that's where the 16% are in the latest poll.
Maybe.
They're all submariners.
They could well be. Although I don't think we've got that many, to be fair.
No, we haven't.
Absolutely not. Now, we're going to speak to our next guest here, who's going to talk to us a little bit about the state of play. He is Julian King, a former Scotland Yard detective with over 40 years in policing. He's now the founder of a voluntary organisation called Street Safe London. which I imagine is an aim, possibly, rather than a factual description, by the way, Julian. Sorry to say that to you, but welcome to the show. We've been focusing an awful lot this morning on the Prime Minister and the state of the government and how awful it is. But one of the things that's happened under both Sadiq Khan's sort of stewardship and also under Keir Starmer's is that crime, just ordinary street-level crime, seems to have got an awful lot worse. What do you think's going on?
Well, it's yes, you're quite right. We seem to have lost the streets a little bit. I think, why I'm here today really is to describe some incidents that have happened recently, and I have been dealing with Charing Cross Police Station over the past 4 months regarding a vigilante and content creators running around London, causing havoc, carrying out dangerous stunts, and spraying numerous women with red paint, and they've done absolutely nothing. And we've had continued repeat offences, and last weekend it's escalated to a situation where this vigilante, who I've raised concerns about and reported several crimes on behalf of our volunteers, gathered some others and effectively caused havoc, mayhem on Westminster Bridge, old ladies falling over, people being sprayed with red paint. And I've again sent a message to an inspector at Charing Cross Police Station and got the typical sort of ghosting response. Right. So on Saturday, what we decided to do is actually go out on Westminster Bridge ourselves to try and deter some of this activity and to try and reassure our tourists, because we wanted to keep coming down. But at the moment, Westminster Bridge, as it has been for decades, is pretty much lawless.
Right. And do you know who this character is that's doing? Is it one person? Is it a group of people?
Oh,
What's
yeah.
it all about?
Oh, yes. The mainstream media have even been, publishing as somebody that's putting the police to shame and, catching pickpockets. But in reality, no, there's no pickpockets that have been, prosecuted as a result of his actions. But what we do see is that him and other content creators are using the police as patsies, because what he does, he will go around either creating incidents or calling the police saying, right, I've seen a pickpocket, so they'll all come on blues and twos, and he will, film the incident where people are getting searched. Most of these people are just let go. I think the bottom line is they have not actually dealt with him. You can't go around acting as judge, jury, and executioner, much as people might like to. But now it's gone further. And we've got to a stage, where the public are being put at risk with people, running through traffic and causing havoc. And he was in Germany this weekend as well with other content creators from the States, and promoting these cans of red paint, which essentially are self-defense, sprays, but used in a offensive.
I must say, Julian, it's a very confusing story, really, because it's the first I've heard of it. So effectively, what I think you're telling me is that there's a character going around filming other people who are throwing paint on other people or members of the public in order to distract them while they pickpocket them. Is that what's going on?
No. Sorry, you got the
So
wrong
what
end of the
exactly
stick
is
there.
going on? Because I think people are going to be a bit confused.
He is filming himself,
right,
and paying other people to film him,
right,
while he's going round and spraying people with red paint, dragging women, along the street, abusing them.
But what's he? I mean, he's not a vigilante, then, is he? He's just a lawbreaker in some ways, isn't he?
Yes, this is what I'm saying, and the most serious incident at this weekend resulted in an offence of violent disorder, which carries a sentence of 5 years imprisonment.
Right.
And the most that we've been able to get out of the police so far is they've called him in and just advised him about his actions, and the sort of the repercussions, and they seem to be afraid to deal with him. He's been in the Mail on, I think it's the Mail on Sunday, double page spread. He's been on various podcasts here and abroad, and not one senior officer from the Met has had the cojones to actually respond.
Well, I think we've got a video. Let's see if we can play.
You can't actually do that. I've got a compilation of these videos which you can see on my YouTube channel, Street Safe London, and it's much better than 1,000 words. So
all right, well, let's have a look at the video.
I
think we've got a video, Julian. So let's have a look at this and see if that makes it any clearer.
Steal the people, yeah? Change your job till 8 after here, yeah? Don't come to Victoria and Pimlico for stealing the people, yeah? Here is not the place for you stealing. Yes, get mad. You gonna spray on me? It's finished. Idiot. Don't come here for stealing people, yeah? Don't come to Victoria and the Big Ben, Westminster for stealing people. Come back to your country, you rats. Ladra. Corre ladra.
Hasn't it? So he's actually spraying. So he's having a go at pickpockets, in other words, right?
Yes, but he doesn't actually catch them doing anything. Basically, they're walking along the street.
Yeah,
and
but
he
I
might
think a lot of
target
people
them.
would go, well, that's good, isn't it? If he's chasing these people away and stopping them stealing from people, that's a good thing, isn't it?
Well, no. There's ways to do things, and if you want to go out catching pickpockets, do it, but do it properly. Jump on them, catch them at it, and arrest them and hand them over to the police.
Right.
This is purely monetary. He's got a GoFundMe where I think he's up to about £40,000 now,
right.
Plus all the monetised social media channels. And we've also researched some of the videos that have been put out, and you can see that some of these are, pure setups, and some have been doctored.
Right.
Now, my concern is that the police are effectively treating victims or anybody that's reporting crimes to them as, an inconvenience. And we've gone right to the sort of highest
we wouldn't need
levels
any of this, would we, if the police were actually out there stopping people from being pickpocketed, if they actually had more of a presence on the street?
Exactly, and just to let you know, what we did on Saturday on Westminster Bridge is all about the Pelian principles and being visible. And all we did was we had high vis, clothing, and that deterred a lot of the cup and ball scammers. We were able to prevent a few tourists being scammed by people that are taking photographs of them, with Big Ben in the background. We deterred a few pickpockets, but unfortunately that bridge is lawless. There's no one single power or authority with responsibility to clean it up.
Totally mad, absolutely mad. But listen, good to talk to you, Julian. Thanks. We'll look into it and we'll see what's going on with all of this, because it is quite weird. Julian King there from Street Safe London. Quite a bizarre story, that, because, I mean, one, it should be top breaking news, should it not, that the bridge which takes you to the mother of all parliaments is actually now lawless.
What?
Where if you walk across it, you're likely to get your pocket picked.
It's also the bridge that all the MPs have been thrown out of Parliament at the moment, are walking across.
Yeah. You've got a place invaded by massive numbers of pickpockets, and this character, I mean, if he's making money, then good luck to him as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I think,
if he's deterring pickpockets.
I obviously couldn't condone spraying red paint all over alleged villains.
No.
And I do applaud what Julian's doing in terms of him having a presence to try and basically fill in the gap left by the police. Don't forget, we have tens of thousands of Metropolitan Police officers. I'm not sure when we see them. We certainly don't see any police officers in Essex, and there's 4,000 of them.
Yeah, right.
So I kind of applaud what he's doing, but I think he's kind of missing the point a bit, which is, yes, he's trying to step in by being visible, but you can't blame the public for being completely and utterly cheesed off with the lack of police presence, the increase in crime across every borough, town, city, county, street in Britain. And actually, and again, I'm not condoning it, but people stepping in and doing their own thing. I think, look, a word of caution, when it comes to kind of, trying to tackle a gang of Romanian pickpockets or British pickpockets, take your pick, be a little bit careful. I mean, when I tackled a shoplifter a few weeks ago, I was inundated with messages saying you're lucky to be alive because they could have pulled a knife on you. But look, you take a view that if the police aren't going to do the job that we pay them to do through the tax system, then I'm not that surprised that people are taking the law into their own hands.
No, I think we'll see a lot more of that, and that is part. I mean, I imagine if you ran a business, you'd be hiring private security to stop people shoplifting from you. That's for sure. But listen, Russell Quirk is here. We're here, of course, until 9:30, and then we're going to switch over to UK Live. We're going to have a couple of super chats. We're going to try and link you up as well with the Ollie Robbins live appearance in front of the Foreign Select Committee. Foreign Affairs Select Committee. Cindy says this, Mike, what do you think will happen in the government and Starmer's fate? Is this Starmer's fate? Great show. Hats off to Charlotte and Pooch. Yeah, well, I mean, the government's toast as far as I'm concerned. Starmer is toast. He's finished. It's just a matter of time before somebody throws him in the bin. Not the first time he's been bummed at the dispatch box, says Harvey. Well, you say that, but I couldn't possibly comment, obviously. One from Hev Chip. Was Starmer vetted? Yes, he was taken to the vets and had his nads chopped off. We all know he has no balls. Yeah, he doesn't. Somebody's got them in a fridge somewhere. Are we going to be able to flip over to? We're going to basically try and flip over to the Foreign Affairs Select Committee because Ollie Robbins is going to speak live to them, and it's Emily Thornberry in the chair, which should be interesting because she's no fan of Starmer. She's no fan of Starmer because he basically sacked her. He threw her under the bus when she was Shadow Attorney General. But she's also no fan, I don't think, of Ollie Robbins either. So the word is that she's going to be quite tough on him. I'm no fan of hers either.
No. Well, not since she slated the Cross of St George outside someone's house a few years ago.
Well, not
said,
just that.
Look at everything.
She's just a generally objectionable woman.
Well, she's a pompous, obnoxious liberal lefty, isn't
Lady
she?
Noogie.
Yeah. But it's good, I guess, that we don't have someone chairing this that is completely and utterly biased. Look, this could be. Let's not underestimate this. This could be one of the most compelling accounts within British politics that we've seen maybe since Profumo.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. I'm not. Am I overstating that?
It is definitely a big deal. This is because this could bring down Starmer, it could bring down the government, and even if it doesn't do it immediately, it will certainly be part of what it will become over time. We're just waiting for it to start, I guess.
Well, do you think they've collared Ollie Robbins out the back, saying, "Hang on, if you go easy on us,"
giving him the old rubber truncheon technique? I don't know. We'll see.
Well, they'll start with incentives.
Well, I guess we'll go. Should we go and do some news with Edward Hughes and see what we can do? And I'll check what's going on.
Good morning. I'm Edward Hughes. Belendus Maximus Keir Starmer is still doing his best impression of a man who definitely knew nothing about Peter Mandelson's vetting failure. It beggars belief, he says, while apologising to Epstein victims and throwing civil servants under the bus. Classic leadership. Meanwhile, London's Jewish community is enduring repeated arson attacks on synagogues and centres, with counter-terror police eyeing possible Iranian proxies. Gatwick has proudly claimed the title of Britain's worst airport for delays. And in lighter news, the weather's turning changeable after that unusually warm spell. 3 men charged with manslaughter after a tragic golf course incident. MPs are raking in second job cash like it's going out of style, and the SAS is apparently hemorrhaging soldiers over war crimes probes. We support our veterans here on the Mike Graham Show. Please remember to like and subscribe. Laters, Tigers.
Thank you very much to Edward Hughes there with the news. The news is literally going to be made on this show as we speak, because we're expecting any minute now Ollie Robbins to take his seat at the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, where he's going to be asked about his version of events when it comes to the vetting procedure and how it was all handled on Lord Mandelson's behalf, and what Keir Starmer knew and when he knew it. But let's have a look back at what happened yesterday in Parliament, where Starmer got up to first of all make his statement about his explanation for how it all went horribly wrong. Check it out.
Speaker, I know many members across the House will find these facts to be incredible. To that, I can only say they are right. It beggars belief that throughout the whole timeline of events, officials in the Foreign Office saw fit to withhold this information from the most senior ministers in our system in government. That is not how the vast majority of people in this country expect politics, government or accountability to work. And I do not think it's how most public servants think it should work either.
Yes, well, you may say that. We couldn't possibly comment. And the Daily Express headline this morning says it all. For once you are actually right, Prime Minister, it does beg a belief. Because it does. We should have a look, actually, I suppose, shouldn't we? Aside from The Sun, who haven't touched it on the front page, a couple of left-wing newspapers that you brought in very kindly.
Well, yeah, very gingerly, I have to say.
Yes.
I didn't want to be seen with them.
We've got this from The Guardian. Starmer on collision course with Robbins over Mandelson vetting. Because he has kind of set up a pretty straightforward battle of ideas, isn't he, really? Because Starmer's basically blamed Ollie Robbins for everything. Ollie Robbins, I assume, will come out and not blame himself, and he'll blame Keir Starmer and the way the situation's worked.
Well, he will.
The Mirror has obviously chosen to side with Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer yesterday blasted civil servants for not telling him Peter Mandelson had failed security vetting. They chose not to tell me, he says. But given... oh, is it starting? Can we see it? I can hear Emily Thornberry's dulcet tones. There we are. I know that I'm just going to be accused of nitpicking here, but is there any way we can make it slightly bigger? Or is that difficult? Oh, there you go. We're doing this for the first time. This is live news for the first time on the Mike Graham Show. So if you want to watch this, this is where you watch it.
Well, and of course, it'll be the best commentary as well in Britain.
It will be, yeah. So here he is. Charlotte said we can't hear it. I don't know if that's true.
Really?
She says it's muted. Oh. Well, I can hear it.
I can hear it.
Oh.
What are they saying? They're saying they can't hear it as well. Yeah, they're not hearing it on YouTube. Okay. We're hearing that you can't hear it, so we're going to try and fix that.
Okay, let's go back to you for a second then, Mike.
Okay. All right, so we're trying to fix the sound. This is the first time we tried to do this, so bear with us. But basically, Emily Thornberry seemingly very, very nice there to Ollie Robbins.
Well, she's reading, so she's reading a bit of a script, and she starts off by saying, we know this has been a very, very tough time for you, Ollie Robbins. So she's definitely trying to endear herself, isn't she?
Yeah. Shall we try again? Okay. Can we hear that? No? People are saying it's the most sense they've ever heard Emily Thornberry making because they can't hear it. Yeah, we're trying to fix the sound. Bear with us. If we can't fix it, we won't be doing it. Simple as that. But we are going to try and figure out why it's not making any noise for you. We can hear it here in the studio. I'm now hearing from Charlotte that we can hear. Does that mean you can hear it? Okay, what have you done now to make it different? Can you hear now? Saying that there's still no sound. Can we hear Mike, not the video? No, apparently we still can't hear it.
No.
What about over on UK Live? Is it any different on UK Live? Can anyone check that?
Hold on, Mike. I might have a...
Shall we try again?
Yeah, I'm trying something. 1 second.
Sorry, Pooch is trying something else. Still no sound. Bear with us, guys. We're trying to make it work. We'd like to hear what Ollie Robbins has to say. We'd like you to be able to hear it as well.
Last year, I wasn't walking into a vacuum.
Anything
I arrived
now?
to a situation in which...
Can you tell us if you can hear it now?
A due diligence
Still no
report
sound?
had been undertaken into Mandelson
No.
by
Still
the
no
Cabinet
sound, I'm
Office,
afraid.
assessing
No.
the
I
reputational
guess we'll
risks
give up, shall
and
we?
his fitness for office.
Yeah, not to worry.
The Prime Minister had
we can't hear it, so I think we'll just
on
bin
his
it.
fitness for office.
And we'll
the
try and
name-
report on it. We'll try and get Charlotte to do some clips from it when he starts to say something interesting. But it certainly looks at the moment as though we can't make it work, which is a shame.
Yeah.
Because we had great hopes for it. Oh, hang on, we can now hear. They're saying.
Oh, okay, good.
Hang on.
I activated system audio.
Okay.
Right, let's go with it.
That was a good idea of yours.
Yeah.
Activate system audio. No, don't activate system audio. All right, so now can you hear
the Prime
it?
Minister had made
Now
an
we can hear it.
announcement.
Now they're telling me to shut up.
Mandelson was his nominee.
All right, I'll shut up.
Without caveats. The British government had sought agreement, the formal diplomatic process for a host government accepting a nominee from the US government, and that had been obtained before I arrived in post. He'd been given access to the building.
People are saying they can.
He'd been given access to low classification IT. And from time to time, for case-specific issues, he was being given access to higher classification briefing. So I'm afraid I walked into a situation in which there was already a very, very strong expectation, and you will have seen the papers released already under the humble address, that coming from number 10, that he needed to be in post and in America as quickly as humanly possible. The very first formal communication of this to my predecessor from number 10.
I've got it full screen now. She's saying can't hear it. Ah.
Out to Washington quickly. Despite this atmosphere, an atmosphere of pressure, the department completed developed vetting to the normal high standard. Because the vetting process is not there to determine fitness for office or
That's weird, isn't it?
reputational
Why does
risk.
it keep doing that
It's
then?
there to protect national security. And the
I'm
Prime
so
Minister has
sorry.
already
I'm
made those
I'm so
judgments.
sorry to cut across you. We will get onto that, but can I still want to just take it in stages if it's all right with you.
Yes.
Because what I'd like to do is to ask you about, we hear about the circumstances, the announcement, the press release, the King having agreed, the Americans having agreed, the letter to him, congratulating him on it, the access, but it was all subject to vetting, and the question I want to ask is, what kind of pressure additional to that were you put under in relation to the vetting?
Thank you, Chair. And before I answer your question, which I promise I will, it was not I'm afraid I don't think at the point of his appointment and 4 days thereafter it was actually a given that he would be vetted. Again, if you look at the documents submitted under the humble address, there is no stipulation from number 10 that he should be vetted. The welcome that was sent to him immediately afterwards doesn't say welcome to the Foreign Office subject to vetting. The announcement put out on the 20th of December says that he will be out early in the new year. It does not say subject to vetting.
The contract does, though. The contract of employment.
The contract issued to him
says
after he was vetted says that he must maintain his clearance. So did mine.
Okay.
That is an absolutely standard stipulation. But nothing about his appointment actually, as far as I've seen in writing, stipulates it. There was then a debate between Cabinet Office, FCDO, about how to make sure that he is sent out to post with the appropriate clearance. And that took several days. And a position taken from the Cabinet Office was that there was no need to vet Mandelson. He was a member of the House of Lords. He was a Privy Councillor. The risks that attending his appointment were well known and had been made clear to the Prime Minister before appointment. Now, in the end, the FCDO insisted and put its foot down. I understand my predecessor had to be very
This is
firm
incredible.
in
We're
person.
hearing here from Ollie Robbins that he's
that was a
saying
live debate
that the
at the point
diktat
of
from Downing
announcement,
Street, from
and I think
ministers,
it's important to make
was
that clear to the
that there
Committee.
wasn't
And that again
necessarily
should be limited.
a
Those
requirement to
discussions
vet
should be
Peter
limited,
Mandelson
and
at all.
they should be
Such were they
passed off
so
humble address
desperate to get him into the
Well,
US.
given
And what
your
Ollie Robbins said 10
absolutely
minutes ago
understandable
was
focus on
it
scrupulous
was very
accuracy,
clear there was
that's
huge
before my
pressure
time, but I'm sure
to
there
get
will
Peter Mandelson to the US as
And who's the
urgently as
debate
possible.
Yes.
Almost, don't worry about the
Who in the
vetting,
Cabinet Office,
just
you know?
get him there.
Just get him
That's
there.
what we're hearing.
Well, that was obviously the instruction,
briefing
wasn't it?
I
And
had
that's
on
more or less
arrival
what he's
was that
saying.
there
Is Ollie
had
Robbins
been
under oath here?
a position taken from the Cabinet Office that, as I
Well,
say, some of
I mean, lying to
Manson's
Parliament, I guess,
status
has
meant
implications
that
for
vetting
him
might
as it
be
would
unnecessary, and that
an
had
MP.
been a
I don't know.
discussion for several
Yeah.
days after the press notice. It had been resolved before Christmas and resolved in the FCDO's favour. And I only mention it, Chair, because I think to say now that it was always clear that his appointment was subject to vetting is something that the committee should consider whether that's something they need to take more evidence on.
So before we move on, then you're not sure who it was in the Cabinet Office, but can I ask this: was it a politician or was it civil servants?
I don't know. I was not in post at the time. All I understand is that there was a live debate. I think at official level, but I couldn't swear to it.
Okay. So
what we're hearing,
additional
Russell,
to that,
is that basically the view from
other
Downing
pressure
Street
put on
was
you
given
or put
that
on the
we
Foreign
don't really
Office?
care about the vetting procedure.
Just get him in.
I think
Just make
throughout
sure that you get
January,
him passed,
honestly,
so that he can start his job before
my
the inauguration
office,
of Donald Trump.
the Foreign Secretary's
So that's why they
office
wanted to confirm
were
him in
under
December.
It's almost, I'm paraphrasing slightly, appoint him under any circumstances. That's kind of what we're hearing.
Yes.
And Ollie has used the word pressure, Ollie Robbins, many times in the last 10 minutes, where he says there was an atmosphere of pressure on us in the Foreign Office to appoint Peter Mandelson, even to the point that it was not a given that he would be vetted
as far
at
as I
all.
recall, in weather, but only an interest in
No, exactly right.
So when you say private office to private office, you're saying private office of number 10?
Yes, I am.
And who are we talking about there then? Are we talking about Elsa Tarry?
I'm not going to say, Chair. I may no longer be a civil servant, but I didn't come here today to scapegoat other civil servants. I came here
but come on,
to
Ollie
make sure the
Robbins, you need to
committee
tell us if this
understands.
came from Morgan McSweeney or if it came
But I
from
also
Keir
want to know who
Starmer.
the source of this is. And I want to be able to get as much evidence as possible to be able to identify who the source of the pressure was. I mean, from what you know, let's see if I can ask you this way. From what you know, what was the source of the pressure?
Well, I've said I think that the vector I was most conscious of was from number 10 private office.
And the number 10 private office is not sort of is a means by which others ensure that things happen. So behind the number 10 private office, who are we talking about putting pressure on the Foreign Office via the private office?
Thank you for asking it that way, Chair, because that's the reason I do not want to name other officials in number 10. I think that the private office would only have been feeling this pressure themselves if they were under pressure.
Yes.
Okay, that's Starmer.
Did you answer the question?
I don't know.
That's Starmer.
That is Starmer.
So we do know that Morgan McSweeney was a protégé of Peter Mandelson's.
Wow.
And we know
He's
that
gone.
he was very keen on Peter Mandelson getting the job, and we know that he resigned, saying that it was all his fault, and that he had advised the Prime Minister to appoint Peter Mandelson, and took it on the chin, took the blame. So, was it him?
I'm afraid when I said I don't know, I meant it. I don't know.
Right.
I've told the committee what I do know, which is that the Foreign Office was being chased very frequently, and I don't hold the private secretaries responsible for that.
Wow.
And was there any direct communication between anyone in number 10 and you?
No.
So there was no one ringing you on your mobile phone or WhatsApping you or sending you any messages?
No.
And your phone is presumably something which has been handed in as part of the humble address and will be able to be investigated.
Certainly will.
I'm just told that once someone has finished being a civil servant, that their phones are wiped and that they're reused. So could you just give us an undertaking to make sure that doesn't happen?
If they're not stolen.
My phone for the relevant period was downloaded before I left government.
Very good. Very good. Okay. So it's private office to private office, nobody contacting you directly. But again, as far as you're aware, a record was taken of the contact between private office and private office.
I'm sure there are records of interactions between us. I couldn't swear to what those are or how many of them there are, but you'll have to ask the government that, I'm afraid.
Which should be part of the disclosure that's been mandated.
It's a private office, it's your private office. And so
that should be part of the disclosure that's already been mandated to be released as a matter of urgency, even though it's now going to be after the election.
We've had another phone call. We've had, in what other way were you getting pressure?
I'm talking, Chair, remember, I'm talking about the whole of January here,
Yes.
the first 3 weeks of which I was not in post.
Were you actually in the Foreign Office, even though you weren't in post?
I had a handover week the week before I took up the position,
right?
Where Philip told me a bit about the job, and I sat in a room some distant from his and read a lot of papers.
Did he tell you that you were going to get a lot of pressure?
He described to me the steps and the atmosphere that I've described to you.
Yes. Okay. So during the 2 weeks in January that your office is getting pressure, we've heard about phone calls. What else is there? Are there emails as well?
I don't think so. And this is I think the natural thing in many ways, which is that a private secretary wanting to know what's going on, feeling under pressure themselves to deliver, is ringing up and saying, where are we on this? Can we make it happen? Can you deliver? Get on with it.
Yeah. I mean, it's right, isn't it, that there should be official records kept accurately, and information should be handled as openly as possible within the legal framework according to the code. So there should be a record of all the phone calls that are made.
I think if the modern civil servant made a record of every phone call that they received, they would do nothing else, Chair. So I doubt there's a record of every phone call. I'm sure there is a trail that explains that there was a regular contact.
Surely there's a digital record of every phone call that's made. It's not like you have to write it in a log, do you?
I don't seem to be able to buy a coffee
of a number being called,
but
I guess not the transcript of the call itself.
It'll pass. But seriously, it is part of the.
So what is the definition of number 10's private office? Do we think as the man or woman on the ombudsman
Well, let's leave it up.
Omnibus.
And I hear what you say. Not every phone call.
Because I know what I think it means.
Phone calls from number 10 saying, "Get on with it. We want to appoint."
And this was always said as being a ministerial appointment. I think it was Simon Case, the ex-cabinet secretary, had said that if this is a political appointment, then it needs to be treated as such rather than a civil service appointment.
You need to record it each time that you receive it.
The need to record it is to show the extent of pressure that the Foreign Office was being put under by number 10.
Well, as I say, I think that when you take evidence from the government, they will be able to describe that period to you. And I've tried to do my best to do so when I was only in post for 1 week of January.
Okay. Can I ask you this? So let's move on to the 28th of January, when UKSV recommended that developed vetting be denied, and that Peter Mandelson, they identified, was he was a man of high concern. You recognise those two phrases as being applied to Peter Mandelson?
I don't actually, Chair, but we can come on to that in a second.
Okay. Well, we understand that those two things were what UKSV concluded about Peter Mandelson. Now, any questions I ask you about this now are not to be interpreted as questions about what is the content of that vetting. Right? I don't want to hear about what was in it. I want to know what happened as a result. But what I want to ask you is, you had a meeting with the Director of Security, Ian Collard, and I understand that you're saying that he presented you with the findings. You didn't actually read them yourself.
That's correct, Chair. Perhaps I could describe this meeting to you if that would help.
And again, is there a note of it?
There is a note of the decision. The meeting itself, of course, involved the team describing to me some of the issues and the way in which they proposed to manage them. It wouldn't have been appropriate to record that in detail. The decision of what we agreed we would do and the ways in which we would manage it is recorded and is available in the Foreign Office.
And that record is part of, if I can call it, a DV bundle. So there's the UK SV paperwork, and then there's paperwork from the Foreign Office, and so those two, there's a part 1 and part 2, and so it's part of that bundle, but it isn't, the record that you're talking about is not a freestanding document.
I think I know what you're driving at, but may I describe this in my own words, Chair? There has been a good deal of misunderstanding about this process, if I may say so. For the Foreign Office and for several other departments, UKSV does not fail a candidate. Nor does the department, no I know, and apologies Chair, but others have, and nor does the Foreign Office overrule UKSV. The relationship between the two is set out in guidance and has been set out to this committee and in Parliament. And so the outcome of the vetting process is what is decided by the Foreign Office on the basis of the UKSV findings and our own assessment of the risk and whether we can manage them. And so what the meeting I had with the director on the 29th of January, it was an oral briefing. No documents were presented to me, nor did I particularly expect them to be. I have never seen a UKSV document. I was briefed that UKSV considered Mandelson a borderline case and that they were leaning towards recommending that clearance be denied, but that the Foreign Office's Security Department assessed that the risks identified as of highest concern by UKSV could be managed and or mitigated. I was also told that the risks did not relate to Mandelson's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, and that I was told that UKSV acknowledged, I don't know in what way, but acknowledged that the Foreign Office might wish to grant clearance with appropriate risk management. So we talked about what that appropriate risk management might be, and the grant of clearance, the record of that decision, internal, records the grant of clearance and also the mitigations.
I don't really follow why you wouldn't know the contents of the UKSV and their concerns.
It's just getting a little bit complicated here, Russell. So the Prime Minister's private office, by the way, here's what it is. A specialised team of elite civil servants and advisors at 10 Downing Street who manage the UK Prime Minister's daily work, decisions and correspondence. Led by a principal private secretary, they facilitate the flow of policy, advice and briefing papers, acting as a crucial interface between the Prime Minister, the Cabinet Office and government departments. So they are basically his sort of secure.
So would you say that they act entirely on his behalf?
Yeah, totally.
In his name?
Yeah.
Well, yes.
And they do what he wants them to do.
And is it plausible that that office and those people in it being so close to him in Downing Street, they walk past each other 25 times a day, that there would not have been conversations regarding such things as risk management, vetting, security, Mandelson suitability and so on? So you've got, let's say you've got a private office, you've got a lot of PAs sitting there doing your bidding. They do that bidding, but don't actually feed anything back to you whatsoever. It's completely
and apparently they don't ask any questions.
No.
So when
but
Ollie
are putting
Robbins,
daily pressure on to say, have you done this yet? Have you done this yet?
So when they're having these conversations with Ollie Robbins, which he says he was having, and he was getting a very strong impression that they wanted to input.
But he called it an atmosphere of pressure. Not just pressure, but a complete constant atmosphere.
They wanted to make the appointment before the vetting was even done.
Yes.
Because they wanted to do it before the inauguration.
And I think, I might be wrong, because it was right at the beginning. I think Ollie Robbins said in the first few seconds of his testimony here, if it is testimony, statement, whatever, that Mandelson had been given classified briefings even before Ollie Robbins himself took post. So he'd been giving those classified briefings because he was in the role before, either before the vetting was concluded or knowing that the vetting was, let's just say, questionable, and the Foreign Office were minded to say no.
That sounds like what happened.
So he's been given at the highest level of state security, secrets, that's what they are, state secrets, despite the fact he's either not gone through vetting or he's failed prematurely. I think for that reason alone, if Starmer and his private office had put that man in place and said, tell him everything anyway, he's got to go for that.
Well, right. Well, I wonder if Emily Thornberry's going to ask the question as well. We'll go back to it in a second. Did you read The Independent in September?
Do you read the papers?
When it said that the vetting had been denied?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that was the story. Can we go back?
From UKSV and the department assessing those,
This is Ollie Robbins' voice you're
the
hearing
department felt it had long experience and deep capability of assessing and coming up with a plan for how those could be managed and clearance granted. That, that is not unusual in this process, Chair. It was unusual, I admit, that I was briefed on it. I wasn't surprised to be briefed on it given the prominence and the profile of the case, but the underlying interaction between UKSV and the Foreign Office and the decision-making process was entirely standard.
When you were given your oral briefing, you claimed that you were given the impression that Peter Mandelson was a borderline case and not a case of high concern or one that was whereby the UKSV was recommending denial of vetting.
That's correct. I was told, let me be completely precise, I was told, I think, that UKSV were leaning towards recommending against, but accepted it was a borderline case. Okay. And I think it's important to say this, when we're dealing with documents and releases of documents, inevitably things look quite black and white. My understanding is, the personnel security team in the Foreign Office and the vetting team in UKSV are interacting about literally hundreds of DV cases a day. We are a DV by default department, as you know, Chair.
But not as prominent as this
one. We have thousands of people who hold
yeah.
DV.
Oh yeah, what's this one over here?
Many of whom
Peter Mandelson.
are renewing their DV.
Who are these other people I've never heard of?
In brackets, Prince of Darkness. I'm sure he's fine.
Biggest customers for DV services.
And I hear you, I understand this, but this really was exceptional. I mean, there isn't any other DV case where you were getting daily phone calls from number 10. I mean, this was different. You were being put under pressure. And I just find it, if you don't mind me saying, remarkable that you got completely a different view of what UKSV were saying about this than that which I understand is written down.
Well, I respectfully, I disagree, Chair. The department's security team are extremely professional, experienced people. They have a live dialogue with UKSV. The risks that were identified were ones that they felt they understood well and could manage.
Okay. Was there anything in the DV that was not already in the public realm? Was there anything that had been identified that we didn't already know, all of us?
As I wrote to you this morning, Chair, and I'm sorry if this begins to come back to your opening remarks, but I may no longer be an official, but I don't think I can open that box. This system absolutely depends on candidates for vetting knowing that the government will completely respect the confidences that they share.
Yeah, no. So don't tell me. Okay. So if there was anything that wasn't already in the public realm, just tell me that there was something that wasn't already in the public realm. Don't tell me what it was. Just tell me, oh, yeah, there was something else, but sorry, can't tell you.
I'm afraid I'm not prepared to do that, Chair. What that leads to
if it was no,
is, of course, then an absolute
no?
storm of questions as to what that issue was.
I'm not going to ask you a storm of questions. Like, that's going to be my last
question. I trust you on that, Chair. I'm not sure.
I think it's clear that there is.
I'm sorry, Chair. I trust you. I'm not sure that the rest of the world.
She's doing all right, Emily Thornberry.
She is.
Okay, all right. And where is the note of these meetings?
Well, you can always tell with these things.
The decision that was reached in the meeting was recorded
being really nice.
Day.
He's going to go for the jugular. And then pushes. She doesn't like it.
You decided what you
and also,
did,
she wants to nail Starmer.
You didn't make a separate note of.
No.
So it's all on the DV documents.
But hang on, are we now saying that he didn't fail vetting?
The outcome of the consideration by the Foreign Office is
that's Ollie Robbins' impression. It was borderline, and they were minded to say no, but then they said that the risk could be managed. So what is that? Is that, I mean, it's Mandarin speak, right?
It's Mandarin speak for him. He did fail it. But they said they could get around it.
In other words, but I suspect there's another little link in there, which is someone somewhere saying, find a way of making sure we can manage the risk.
That's precisely what I said at the start of the show. Because that's what Downing Street would have said. That's what the Prime Minister's office would have said. Make it happen.
The decision is always formally made by the personnel security team. They are
absolutely,
especially if there's now something else in the vetting that the public don't know. That Ollie Robbins is badly hinting does exist.
Minute recording the Foreign Office's decision says ESND have decided to grant clearance.
And was there anybody else in that meeting apart from you and him?
I think at least one member of Ian's team was there, but I couldn't swear to it.
Would their job be to take a minute of the discussion?
I hope not, Chair, because the issues we discussed should not have been recorded at the tier of classification that would be available.
Even if it was then put into the DV documents?
They will have recorded the decision back in the secure system we use with UKSV.
You have to go.
And did you tell anybody once you'd made that decision?
Did I tell anybody that Peter Mandelson had been granted DV clearance?
Yeah.
I'm sure I will have told probably the Foreign Secretary and probably Number 10, but to be honest, it will have been implicitly clear within a day or two anyway, because we'd always said he would not be sent on posting to Washington without it.
Get it. You're getting a lot of pressure. You're getting maybe daily phone calls. So surely somebody, you would have crossed your mind, I'm going to ring X, who you're not prepared to tell me who it is, and tell them, for heaven's sake, get off my back, I've cleared him.
Honestly, Chair, it's plausible, but I don't remember doing so.
It's likely more than plausible that you would have rung somebody up immediately you'd made the decision and told them you'd made the decision.
It's also possible that I'm capable of a bit of obstinacy, and people ring me all the time asking me.
I can understand you. I get the vibe, but nevertheless, I do not believe that you didn't tell someone, and you know where I'm going next. Where's the note? Where's the note of the phone call, and who did you speak to tell them that the decision had been made?
I don't think I made such a phone call, and if I did, it would have been simply to share the outcome of the process, which is that DV had been given.
Right, so you might have discussed it with someone else and got them to tell whoever it was that was pushing the Foreign Office as to what had happened.
It's possible, but Chair, honestly, I am trying to do my best to help you, but I think this is a bit of a red herring. Within hours, as the humble address pack makes clear, Peter Mandelson was written to...
And therefore he can't throw everybody under the bus, otherwise he won't be trusted in his next role.
Which the Foreign Office had always said he would only get once he passed DV. So it was absolutely clear. Not only that, within minutes of us recording our decision to grant DV, Peter will have received a DV certificate, and it's entirely possible that Mandelson himself will have then told people it's been granted. I don't think I felt under any obligation to tell anybody.
I think you are under an obligation to keep accurate minutes and notes of decisions that you make, of actions that you take, and your reasoning. And I think that it's quite clear from the Civil Service Code that it is your responsibility to keep accurate official records and handle information as openly as possible within the legal framework, that you must not be influenced by improper pressure from others, that you must not ignore inconvenient facts or relevant considerations when providing advice or making decisions, and that in order to be able to cover yourself, don't mind anything else, given that's what the ministerial the code says,
do a 1 minute synopsis.
You would take a note in order to make it clear that you were not subject to undue pressure, that you were not ignoring inconvenient facts, that you were behaving properly. But it doesn't look like there has been any notes about any of this.
Can I make 2 points?
So, Russell,
I've been
summation?
If there's notes, they're on Morgan McSweeney's phone, which has been wiped and is now in Hong Kong, it seems. But this is extraordinary. Ollie Robbins starts off by kind of throwing Keir Starmer and the Number 10 private office under the bus.
Yes.
He then doesn't go as far as to say, and I'll tell you who I was talking to, this is where the pressure was coming from, this is who I spoke to.
But they've said several times daily phone calls, so he's getting daily phone calls, maybe more than once a day.
And so you'd have to ask, is it appropriate for Number 10, on behalf of the Prime Minister, let's be clear, that Number 10 private office speaks and acts on behalf of and in the name of Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister. Is it appropriate of them to do what they've done in terms of that daily pressure? We all know what that's like, right? If you've got a boss, particularly, don't forget, Ollie Robbins is in a new job. He's in a brand new role, and he's getting calls literally from day one saying, have you done this yet? Have you approved it? So the inference is, we don't care about the ins and outs and the detail, just approve the guy. They've already put him in the role without waiting for vetting. They've already briefed him on national secrets that are at the highest level of security.
He's already been in to get briefing on national secrets.
He's got the pass
before. He's had the pass, he's had access to IT. This is before he's even been given the job.
This is just me, right? But is it beyond the realms of possibility to think that this is exactly, it's pretty much what Mike said at the beginning of the show at 7 o'clock. There have been instructions given to appoint Peter Mandelson at Keir Starmer's request because someone's pulling his strings potentially, no matter what.
Yeah.
And then, because they have to go through the process of vetting, bearing in mind Simon Case, who's the Cabinet Secretary, said right at the beginning, Prime Minister, you really should wait until the outcome of the vetting before you appoint him.
Yeah.
Starmer, we know, ignored that. Why did he ignore it? Because he intended to appoint him no matter what.
Yeah.
It's now blown up in their faces because he didn't pass vetting. Now what they're trying to spin here, whether it's the Foreign Office, whether it's Ollie Robbins himself or others, is that, well, we leaned towards, or the vetting process leaned towards saying no, but then we realised, potentially because of another load of pressure from Number 10's private office, that we could, inverted commas, mitigate the risks. Well, that's a bit like my lorry driver analogy earlier on, saying, look, he's got 2 DUIs, right? He's been caught drink driving in a school bus twice, but we think we can mitigate it so it doesn't happen again. But he's already driving the bus.
Yeah, he's already 100 miles away picking up some kids.
Yes.
Don't worry, it's fine. Amazing, extraordinary. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot to say about this, and it's going to go on for a while. But Russell, thank you for being here all morning, and thank you for your efforts and contributions to what we're trying to figure out here. But it certainly looks as though there's no question that there was a massive, massive amount of pressure coming from Downing Street, coming from the private office of the Prime Minister to make sure that Peter Mandelson got the job. It's really that simple. So the idea that Mandelson wasn't told that he didn't pass the vetting when every single day all of his advisors and people who were working for him in the civil service department were telling Ollie Robbins to get on with it and to give him the job. You know, the idea that he didn't know anything and wasn't told anything is absolute cobblers, right?
And bear in mind, it's not like Mandelson was a clean skin. It's, we think he's fine. He's got no history.
Right.
You know, again, this is the man who's got the nickname the Prince of Darkness. Yeah. Therein lies a clue as to whether you should be giving him the job or not. The Prince of Darkness, right?
You would think.
A sinister Machiavellian individual that was fired from government, not once, but twice for dishonesty.
Yeah. And then also accused of selling secrets to a convicted paedophile from the government, directly from an office where he was actually the business secretary under Gordon Brown, and so that he could make more money on the financial markets.
And also has a lobbying firm where some of his clients were linked to the Chinese government.
Yeah.
I mean, what could possibly go wrong?
I know.
It has.
Yeah, well, it's all gone wrong, and Starmer's toast. Simple as that. Russell, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Russell Quirk will be back, of course, although you're in LA, I think, next week, aren't you?
I am. I'll be beaming in.
He'll be beaming in from Los Angeles next week because he is that kind of guy. Thank you very much indeed.
Kinsey.
You're going to see Kinsey Schofield?
I'm not going to see her specifically. I'm going to for other things, but I'm going to be having a drink with Kinsey.
Good man. We'll give her our regards. We're going to get Lee Harris on now, but first, should we go back to Ollie Robbins and see what he's saying? If we can.
It is clear of how the system works.
Arrived in post, the extent to which various steps had already been appointed, due diligence, the approval of the King, the obtaining of agreement. Were you surprised that all of those had been completed without the vetting process having been done?
Cheers. Good break.
Mr. John, in the narrow sense, I wasn't surprised because I've been following the news. So when I arrived in post, I knew perfectly well that the Prime Minister had made his appointment, that it had been announced. And of course, then in my handover with Philip, he told me about agreement and the other steps that you mentioned. As I look back, whilst the Foreign Office didn't see it as I understand it at the time, I am also completely unsurprised by Simon Case's advice to the Prime Minister of November 2024, that if he wished to make a political appointment, it would be the safest course to achieve security clearance before making the announcement. And I think
Listening to Ollie Robbins there, speaking on behalf of himself as the head of the Foreign Office, effectively. We're going to switch over now to UK Live, which we normally do at 9:30. We're running slightly late today because of this particular live experiment we're doing for the first time, bringing you live commentary and live action from the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. We just saw John Whittingdale there asking questions. Emily Thornberry is the chair. Ollie Robbins is being sort of slightly, shall we say, economical with some of the truth, it would appear. But let's flip ourselves